I pulled into a gas station on the outskirts of Atlanta at 2 in the morning and saw a homeless woman sleeping in a rusted van with her child. I almost kept walking until I saw the little boy's face pressed against the cold glass. It was my grandson. I banged on the window and asked where the luxury apartment I bought for them was. My daughter looked at me with terror in her eyes and screamed that her husband and mother-in-law said she had no rights and kicked her out. That was the moment I felt my blood turn into ice. I told her to get out and come with me now. Before I tell you how I made them pay for every single tear my daughter shed, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up for your family against people who mistook your silence for weakness. The rain in Atlanta does not wash things clean, it just makes the dirt slicker. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of night where the humidity clings to your skin like a second shirt. I was driving my old Ford F-150, the same truck I have had for 15 years. To the world, I am just Clint Jefferson, a retired structural engineer who spends his days fishing and minding his own business. I wear flannel shirts and work boots. I drive a truck that has seen better days. People look at me and see an old man living on a pension. They see a grandfather who probably clips coupons to get by. They have no idea that I spent 40 years ensuring that the foundations of the tallest skyscrapers in this city did not collapse under their own weight. They do not know that I own the land those skyscrapers sit on. I pulled into the Chevron off the highway because my fuel light had been on for 10 miles. The station was empty except for a beat-up van parked in the darkest corner of the lot away from the overhead lights. It was a gray Econoline rusted around the wheel wells with curtains taped up over the back windows. I did not think much of it at first. You see a lot of people living out of their cars these days. The economy is hard and life is unforgiving. I pumped my gas listening to the rhythm of the rain hitting the metal roof of the pump island. Then I heard it, a cough, a wet, rattling cough that sounded too small to belong to a grown man. I looked over at the van. The front passenger window was cracked open just an inch for ventilation. Through the gap I heard a child whimpering. It was a sound that cut through the noise of the rain and went straight to my gut. I thought about my own grandson Leo. He was 5 years old. I had not seen him in 3 weeks. My son-in-law Brad always had an excuse. They were busy, they were on vacation. Leo had a cold. I tried to be respectful. I tried to give them space. I finished pumping the gas, but I could not get back in my truck. Something about that van pulled at me. I walked over telling myself I would just offer them $20 for a hot meal. As I got closer, the street lamp flickered and cast a beam of light through the windshield. I saw a woman slumped over the steering wheel, her head resting on a folded jacket. In the back seat, curled up under a thin, dirty blanket, was a small boy. The boy turned his head. The light caught his face. My heart stopped beating in my chest. It was Leo. I froze. My brain could not process what my eyes were seeing. This was impossible. 2 years ago, I wrote a check for $600,000 to buy a 2-bedroom condo in downtown Atlanta. It was my wedding gift to my daughter Jasmine and her husband Brad. It was a penthouse suite with a view of the park, a doorman, and heated floors. It was supposed to be their security. It was supposed to be the foundation I built for them so they would never have to struggle the way I did. I rushed to the driver's side door and banged on the glass. The woman jerked awake, eyes wide with panic. She scrambled backward, reaching for something to defend herself. When she saw my face, she froze. She rolled down the window with a trembling hand. "Daddy," she whispered. It was Jasmine. My beautiful, brilliant Jasmine, who had a master's degree in early childhood education. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Her hair was matted. Her eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark bruises of exhaustion. She was wearing a stained sweatshirt I did not recognize. The smell coming from the minivan was a mix of stale food, unwashed bodies, and despair. I opened the door. The interior light flickered on. I saw bags of clothes shoved into corners, fast food wrappers on the floor. This was not a temporary situation. This was their home. "Jasmine," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "What are you doing here? Where is your apartment?" She burst into tears. It was a broken, ugly sound. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed so hard her shoulders shook. In the back, Leo started crying too. "Grandpa," he wailed, "I want to go home. I am cold." I reached into the back and pulled Leo out of his car seat. He felt feverish. I wrapped my heavy rain jacket around him. I looked at my daughter. I needed answers, and I needed them now. "Where is Brad?" I asked. "He kicked us out," she choked out. "3 days ago." "Kicked you out," I repeated. I bought that apartment. It is in your name. He cannot kick you out of your own house. He said it is not my house anymore, she cried. He said I signed it over to him. I felt a vein in my forehead begin to throb. Signed it over. What are you talking about? Last month, she stammered, wiping her nose with her sleeve. I had that surgery on my wrist. Remember, I was on painkillers. Brad brought me a stack of papers. He said they were insurance forms for the hospital bills. He said I had to sign them right then or the insurance would deny the claim. I was groggy, Daddy. I trusted him. I just signed where he put the sticky notes. I closed my eyes for a second, putting the pieces together. A quitclaim deed. That son of a bitch had slipped a quitclaim deed into a stack of medical forms. He had tricked his own wife into signing away her property rights while she was medicated. He changed the locks on Tuesday. Jasmine continued, her voice trembling with rage and shame. I came home from picking Leo up from preschool and my key would not work. His mother, Patricia, opened the door. Patricia, Brad's mother. A woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and looked at me like I was the hired help every time we met. A woman who smiled with her mouth but never with her eyes. She told me to leave. Jasmine sobbed. She said the apartment belonged to Brad now and that I was trespassing. She had my suitcases packed and sitting in the hallway. She said if I made a scene, she would call the police and tell them I was on drugs. She said she would show them my prescription bottles and tell them I was an addict and unfit to be a mother. And Brad, I asked. Where was he while his mother was throwing his wife and child into the street? He was standing right behind her, Jasmine whispered. He was drinking a beer. He laughed, Daddy. He told me that I was too stupid to own property if I did not read what I signed. He said he was doing me a favor by taking the burden off my shoulders. I looked at my daughter broken and shivering in a gas station parking lot. I looked at my grandson clinging to my neck like a lifeline. I thought about the condo with the marble countertops and the view of the city. I thought about the check I signed. I thought about the handshake I shared with Brad at the wedding where I looked him in the eye and told him to take care of my girl. Why didn't you call me? I asked gently. He told me if I called you, he would file for emergency custody, Jasmine said, terror flooding her eyes again. He said he has a lawyer. He said he would tell the court you are a violent old man and that I am an unstable addict. He said I would never see Leo again. I was so scared, Daddy. I just took Leo and got in the van and drove. I did not know where to go. I looked at the rain falling on the asphalt. I looked at the rusted van. I realized then that my daughter had been living in a prison of fear for a long time. This did not happen overnight. You do not end up in a van because of one signature. You end up here after years of being told you are nothing, years of being gaslighted, years of having your confidence chipped away until you believe you deserve the rain. I took the keys to the van from her hand. Get your things, I said. Get the important things. Leave the rest. Where are we going? She asked, wiping her eyes. We are going to my house, I said. You are going to take a hot shower. You are going to eat a warm meal. Leo is going to sleep in a real bed. But Brad, she whispered. He said if I go to you, he will come for us. Let him come, I said. My voice was calm. It was the calm of a man who knows exactly how much weight a beam can hold before it snaps. It was the calm of a man who knows where the structural weaknesses are. Brad Miller thought he was dealing with a helpless old man and a naive wife. He thought he had won because he had a piece of paper and a loud mouth. He did not know that he had just declared war on a man who built fortresses for a living. He did not know that the apartment was not just a gift, it was a test, and he had failed it in the most spectacular way possible. He did not know that ownership is a complicated thing, especially when you are dealing with a man who understands the fine print better than any lawyer. I helped Jasmine into the passenger seat of my truck. I buckled Leo into the back. I looked at the van one last time, a symbol of their cruelty. We drove away from the gas station, the windshield wipers slapping a steady rhythm against the glass. Jasmine fell asleep within minutes, exhaustion finally overtaking her fear. I drove through the dark streets of Atlanta, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I did not go straight home. I pulled over to the side of the road a few blocks from the condo building. I looked up at the high-rise. The lights were on in the penthouse. I could see shadows moving in the window. They were probably celebrating. Patricia was probably drinking her wine, congratulating herself on getting rid of the baggage. Brad was probably counting the money he thought he had just made. They were comfortable, they were warm, they were secure. Enjoy it, I whispered to the rain. Enjoy it tonight, because tomorrow I am going to remind you that every structure has a breaking point, and I know exactly where yours is. I put the truck in gear and drove my family home. The betrayal was deep. It was ugly. But as I looked at my sleeping daughter, I knew one thing for sure. They had made the classic mistake of the greedy and the cruel. They looked at the surface and thought they saw everything. They saw a quiet black man in a pickup truck and thought he was powerless. They were about to find out that the most dangerous thing in the world is a man who has patience, resources, and a reason to use them. The game had changed, and I was about to teach Brad and Patricia Miller a lesson in structural engineering they would never forget. When you remove the load-bearing wall, the whole house comes down. I drove my truck back to the small brick house I had owned for 30 years. It was a solid house. I built the retaining wall in the back myself. I reinforced the porch steps with steel brackets. It was not fancy, but it was safe. I carried Leo inside first. He was light, too light for a 5-year-old boy. His skin was hot against my neck. I laid him in the guest room bed, the one that used to be Jasmine's. I pulled the heavy quilt up to his chin. Then I went back for my daughter. She walked like a ghost. Her eyes were vacant. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I told her to sleep. I told her I would handle it. She did not ask how. She just nodded and lay down next to her son, curling her body around him like a shield. I walked out of the room and closed the door softly. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the silence of my own home. It was a heavy silence. It was the kind of silence that comes before a tornado touches down. I went to the kitchen and drank a glass of tap water. My hands were steady. That is the thing about being an engineer. When you see a crack in the foundation, you do not panic. You assess the damage, you calculate the load, you determine the point of failure, and then you fix it. Or you bring the whole thing down to build it again. I walked out to my truck. The rain had not let up. It was coming down harder now, washing the grime of the city into the gutters. I got in and turned the key. The engine roared to life, a deep guttural sound that matched the feeling in my chest. I did not turn on the radio. I needed to think. I drove back toward the city, toward the skyline I had helped build. I knew every shortcut. I knew every one-way street. I drove with a singular focus. The condo building rose up ahead of me like a glass needle piercing the dark clouds. I parked the truck right in front of the lobby entrance. I did not care about the no parking zone. I did not care about the valet who waved his arms at me. I stepped out into the rain. I was wearing my work boots and a flannel shirt stained with grease from the day before. I looked like exactly what they thought I was, an old black laborer who had lost his way. The doorman tried to stop me. He was a young kid, new on the job. He put a hand on my arm. I just looked at him. I did not say a word. I just looked at him with the weight of 40 years of concrete and steel behind my eyes. He dropped his hand and stepped back. He let me pass. I took the elevator to the penthouse floor. The ride was smooth and silent. The doors opened onto a hallway lined with plush carpet and modern art. It smelled of money. It smelled of lavender and floor wax. I walked to the door at the end of the hall, the door I had paid for, the door that was supposed to protect my family. I took the spare key from my pocket. It was a brass key, heavy and cold. I slid it into the lock. It did not turn. I tried again. Nothing. It hit a hard stop. They had changed the tumblers. Of course they had. They were thorough in their cruelty. I put the key back in my pocket. I did not knock. I pounded. I hit that solid oak door with the side of my fist, 3 hard strikes that echoed down the hallway like gunshots. "Open the door," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried. I heard movement inside. I heard a woman's voice, sharp and annoyed. Then the lock clicked. The door opened a few inches, held by a security chain. A face appeared in the gap. It was Patricia Miller. She was wearing a silk robe the color of champagne. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, even at 3 a.m. She held a glass of red wine in one hand. When she saw me, her lip curled. It was a look I had seen 1,000 times in my life. It was a look that said I was dirt. It was a look that said I was invisible. "Mr. Jefferson," she said. Her voice was ice. "Do you have any idea what time it is? You are disturbing the peace." "I want to see Brad," I said. "Brad is sleeping," she replied, taking a sip of her wine. "As you should be. Go home, Clint. You do not belong here." "I own this apartment, Patricia," I said, stepping closer to the door. She laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. You really are confused, aren't you? You gave this apartment to them, and now it belongs to Brad. That is how gifts work. Now please leave before I call security. You are making the hallway smell like gasoline. She started to close the door. I put my boot in the gap. I pushed. The chain went taut. Patricia gasped and stepped back, spilling wine on her expensive robe. "Get your foot out of my door," she hissed. "You people are always so aggressive. I knew this would happen. I told Brad that marrying into your family was a mistake. Violence is just in your nature, isn't it?" There it was, the polite racism, the kind that hides behind concern and property values, the kind that calls a grandfather looking for his family aggressive. I did not flinch. I pushed harder. "Brad," I called out. "Get out here!" Brad appeared behind his mother. He was wearing pajama pants and no shirt. He looked soft. He looked like a man who had never done a day of hard labor in his life. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw fear. But then he looked at his mother and he found his courage. He smirked. "Clint," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Look, man, it is late. Jasmine is gone. She left." "She did not leave," I said. "You threw her out. You threw my grandson out on the street." "She chose to leave," Brad said, shrugging. "I told her the new rules. She didn't like them, so she left. It is not my fault she is unstable." "Unstable," I repeated. "Yeah," Brad said. "She has been acting crazy lately. Probably the drug she was on for her wrist. Or maybe she gets it from you. I don't know. But I couldn't have that around me. I have a business to run." "You are a real estate agent without a license, Brad," I said. "You don't have a business. You have a gambling problem." His face tightened. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "Open this door. We are going to talk about ownership." Brad laughed. He walked closer to the door, standing safely behind the chain and his mother. He held up a piece of paper. It was folded and crumpled like he had been carrying it in his pocket. He unfolded it and pressed it against the crack in the door. "Read it and weep, old man," he said. I looked at the paper. It was a standard legal form, a quitclaim deed. At the bottom in shaky, uneven ink was my daughter's signature. Jasmine Jefferson Miller. "She signed it last week," Brad said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Full transfer of title. Sole ownership to Bradley Miller. It is notarized. It is filed. It is legal. This is my apartment. Jasmine has no rights here, and neither do you." I stared at the signature. I recognized the loop of the J, but the rest of it was trailing off weak. It was the signature of someone who could barely hold a pen. It was the signature of someone under the influence of heavy sedation. "You drugged her," I said. "I gave her her prescribed medication," Brad said, smiling. "She signed it willingly. She wanted me to have security. She knows I am the man of the house. She knows I am the one who makes the decisions." Patricia chimed in, smoothing her stained robe. "It is for the best, Clint. Really. Jasmine is obviously incapable of managing assets. Brad is doing her a favor. He is taking the burden off her shoulders. Now she can go find herself or whatever it is you people do when you are not leeching off others." I looked at them, the mother and the son, the leech and the snake. They stood there in the warmth of the home I paid for drinking wine, sneering at me. They thought they had won. They thought a piece of paper made them kings. They thought I was just a helpless old man standing in the rain. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It was heavy and hard like a bag of wet cement. I wanted to kick the door down. I wanted to wrap my hands around Brad's soft neck and squeeze until the smirk fell off his face. I wanted to tear down the walls I had paid for, but I did not. I was a structural engineer. I knew that brute force was not always the answer. Sometimes you have to find the stress fracture. Sometimes you have to let gravity do the work. I stepped back. I took my foot out of the door. "You think that paper protects you?" I said quietly. "It does," Brad said. "It is ironclad. My lawyer said so." "Your lawyer is an idiot," I said. "And so are you." Patricia scoffed. "Oh, spare us the threats. You are trespassing. I have already called the police. They should be here any minute. I told them there was an intruder, a large, angry man threatening us. I am sure they will be very interested to meet you." I heard the sirens then. They were distant, but getting closer. Blue lights bounced off the wet pavement of the street below. "Go ahead, wait for them," Brad taunted. "Maybe you can share a cell with your junkie daughter." I looked at Brad. I memorized his face. I memorized the way his eyes looked glassy and arrogant. I memorized the way his mother stood protectively in front of him like he was a prize instead of a parasite. "I am leaving," I said. "Run away." "Grandpa." Brad laughed. "Go back to your shack." I turned my back on them. I walked down the hallway. I did not look back when they slammed the door. I did not look back when I heard the lock click. I walked to the elevator. I rode it down to the lobby. The police cars were pulling up to the curb as I walked out. 2 officers got out, hands on their holsters. They saw me. An old black man in work boots walking out of a luxury building. They tensed. "Sir, stop right there," one of them shouted. I stopped. I raised my hands slowly. I did not want to give them an excuse. I knew the rules of this game. I knew how it looked. "We got a call about a disturbance," the officer said, shining a flashlight in my eyes. "I was just leaving, officer," I said calmly. "My name is Clinton Jefferson. I was visiting my daughter's apartment." There was a misunderstanding. The officer looked me up and down. He saw the truck. He saw the grease on my shirt. He saw the tiredness in my face. He lowered the flashlight slightly. "Do you live here?" he asked. "Not anymore," I said. "Get in your truck and go," the officer said. "If we get another call, you are going for a ride." I nodded. I got in my truck. I watched them walk into the building. They were going up to reassure the nice white lady and her son. They were going up to tell them the threat was gone. I put the truck in gear and pulled away. The rain was stopping. The city lights reflected on the wet asphalt like spilled oil. I felt a strange calm wash over me. It was the calm of clarity. They thought the door was locked. They thought the chain would hold. They thought the paper was a shield. They did not know who I was. They did not know that I knew how to dismantle things bolt by bolt. They did not know that I had built the trust fund that bought that apartment. They did not know that the quitclaim deed was only one piece of a puzzle they did not even know existed. I drove home to my daughter and my grandson. I had work to do. I had to call Sarah Jenkins, my lawyer. I had to call Kowalski. I had to start the machine. Brad Miller wanted to play games with ownership. He wanted to talk about rights. He had no idea. He had just locked himself inside a burning building and he was too stupid to smell the smoke. I was not going to break down the door. I was going to seal it shut and let him feel the heat. The war had started and the first shot had been fired in silence. I sat in the high back leather chair across from Sarah Jenkins. Her office smelled of lemon polish and expensive coffee. It was on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown. From here, the city looked like a circuit board, neat and organized. But down on the street where my daughter was sleeping in my guest room, it was a mess. Sarah was a shark in a silk blouse. She was 35, black, and had graduated top of her class from Harvard Law. I had hired her 10 years ago to handle my estate planning because she did not smile when she talked about money. She treated law like warfare. She was holding the quitclaim deed Brad had waved in my face the night before. She had pulled a digital copy from the county records office first thing that morning. She studied it with a magnifying glass, her eyes narrowing behind her rimless spectacles. The silence in the room was heavy. I watched her face. I knew that look. It was the look of an engineer finding a hairline fracture in a load-bearing beam. "This is bad, Clint," she said, putting the paper down. "It is legally binding on the surface. The signature matches Jasmine's. The notary stamp is valid. It was filed 3 days ago." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "I told you he tricked her," I said. "She was recovering from surgery. She was on heavy painkillers. She thought she was signing insurance forms for the hospital." Sarah nodded slowly. "I believe you. And a judge might believe you too, eventually. We can argue undue influence. We can argue lack of capacity due to the medication. We can subpoena the medical records to prove she was under the influence of narcotics at the time of signing. We can depose the notary and ask why they notarized a signature from a woman who was clearly impaired." I felt a flicker of hope. "So we can get the apartment back." Sarah looked at me and her expression was grim. "We can try. But Clint, you need to understand the timeline. To prove fraud and undue influence, we have to file a lawsuit. We have to go through discovery. We have to get on the court docket. In Fulton County, a civil case like this could take 6 months, maybe a year." "A year," I repeated. My voice was flat. "My grandson does not have a year. My daughter does not have a year. They are homeless now." "That is the precision of the cruelty," Sarah said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the desk. Brad knew exactly what he was doing. Or someone told him exactly what to do. He timed it perfectly. He waited until she was vulnerable physically and mentally. He slipped the most important document of her life into a stack of administrative paperwork. It is evil, Clint. But it is smart. It is a loophole big enough to drive a truck through. I looked out the window at the gray sky. I thought about Jasmine. She was a teacher. She spent her days wiping noses and teaching babies how to share. She did not know how to fight people like Brad. She did not know that the man sleeping next to her was waiting for the moment her guard was down so he could steal the roof over her head. "There is something else you need to know," I said. I turned back to Sarah. "Brad thinks he stole a condo from a retired engineer living on a pension. He thinks the well is dry." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Go on." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. I slid it across the mahogany desk. Sarah opened it. She pulled out the bank statements. She pulled out the portfolio summaries. She pulled out the documents for the Jefferson Family Trust. I watched her eyes widen as she scanned the numbers. She flipped through the pages faster and faster. She saw the patent royalties from the bridge suspension system I designed in '95. She saw the consulting fees from the Dubai infrastructure project. She saw the diversified portfolio that had been compounding interest quietly for 30 years. "You are not just comfortable, Clint," she whispered. "You are wealthy." I shrugged. I did not buy fancy cars. I did not buy big houses. I reinvested. I built a fortress of capital that nobody could see. I wanted Jasmine to build her own life. I wanted her to find a man who loved her for her, not for my money. I wanted her to have the pride of earning her way. The apartment was a test, Sarah. It was a test to see if Brad would build a life with her, or if he would just take what was given. He failed, Sarah said, closing the folder. He failed spectacularly. "He thinks he is fighting a man with a hammer," I said. "He does not know I have a wrecking ball." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "Okay, this changes things. We have the resources to fight a long war of attrition. We can bury him in legal fees. We can bleed him dry until he gives the apartment back just to make it stop." But then her computer dinged. She glanced at the screen. Her face fell. The shark-like confidence vanished, replaced by genuine alarm. "Clint, come look at this." I walked around the desk. On her screen was a real estate listing. It was on Zillow. It was brand new, listed 2 hours ago. It was the condo. "He has listed it," Sarah said, her voice tight. "And look at the price." I looked. My stomach turned over. The listing price was $400,000. I had paid $600,000 cash for it 2 years ago. The market value was close to $700,000 now. "He is dumping it," I said. "He is selling it for cash. He is liquidating," Sarah said, typing furiously on her keyboard. "He is asking for a cash-only quick close offer. He wants the money now. He does not care about the loss. He just wants to turn the deed into liquid assets before we can file an injunction." "If he sells it to a third party," I asked, feeling the cold logic of the law closing in around my neck. "If he sells it to a good-faith purchaser," Sarah said, not looking up. "If someone buys it without knowing about the fraud." "Then the house is gone, Clint. We can sue Brad for the money later. But the property itself, the home you bought for your daughter, it will belong to someone else, and we will never get it back." "How fast can he sell it?" "At that price," Sarah said. "In this market. He could have a contract by tonight. He could close in a week if he finds a cash buyer who does not care about inspections." "We have to stop him," I said. "File the injunction. I am drafting it now," Sarah said. "But I have to get a judge to sign it. I have to get it served. I have to get a lis pendens filed on the title to warn off buyers. It takes time, Clint. Even if I run to the courthouse right now, Brad might already have a buyer lined up. He is moving with a desperation I have never seen. Why, I asked. Why is he so desperate? Why throw away $200,000 in equity just to sell it fast?" "Because he needs the money today," Sarah said. "Not next month. Today. People do not conduct fire sales unless they are on fire." I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I felt the vibration of the floor beneath my feet, the subtle sway of the skyscraper in the wind. I understood structure. I understood stress points. Brad Miller was under a load he could not carry. He was cracking. And when concrete cracks, it reveals what is inside. "Do the legal work, Sarah," I said. "File the papers. Get the judge. Do everything by the book." "Where are you going?" she asked. "I am going to find out what kind of fire Brad is running from," I said. "And I am going to make sure he gets burned." I left the office. I took the elevator down 42 floors. The world of lawyers and judges was too slow. It was too clean. Brad was playing dirty. He was playing a game of street rules. He drugged his wife. He kicked his son into the rain. He was trying to fence a stolen house like it was a stolen watch. I needed someone who knew the streets. I needed someone who could find the rot inside the walls without asking for a warrant. I sat in my truck and pulled out my flip phone. I dialed a number I had not called in 5 years. It rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. It sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. Jefferson, the voice said. I thought you were dead. Not yet, Kowalski, I said. I have a job. I am retired Clint, he grunted. I grow tomatoes now. My back hurts. It pays $10,000 cash, I said, and it involves a man who hurt my daughter. The line went silent for a moment. I heard the flick of a lighter and the inhale of a cigarette. Kowalski was an ex-cop who got kicked off the force for breaking too many rules and too many jaws. He was the best private investigator in Atlanta if you wanted answers that could not be used in court but could definitely be used to destroy a man's life. Give me a name, Kowalski said. Brad Miller, I said. He is a real estate agent who does not sell houses. He just listed a penthouse for $200,000 under market value. I want to know why. I want to know who he owes. I want to know what he is afraid of. And I want to know it by tonight. You think he is in deep? Kowalski asked. I think he is drowning, I said. I will find the anchor, Kowalski said. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street at midnight. Bring the cash. And Clint. Yeah. If he hurt Jasmine. Kowalski said, his voice dropping an octave. We are going to need more than a lawsuit. I know, I said. I hung up the phone. I looked at the city skyline. Somewhere in that concrete jungle, Brad Miller was trying to sell my family's future for quick cash. He thought he was fast. He thought he was clever. He did not know that I had just let the dogs off the leash. The law was a shield, and Sarah was good at holding it, but Kowalski was a sword, and I was about to swing him. I started the truck. I had to go home and check on Leo. I had to tell Jasmine that her father was handling it, but I would not tell her how. She still believed in the goodness of people. She still believed that the truth would set you free. I knew better. The truth is just a tool. Sometimes you use it to build, and sometimes, like tonight, you use it to bury someone. Brad wanted to sell the house. Fine. I was going to make sure that the only thing he bought with that money was a one-way ticket to hell. The legal loophole was closed. The street justice window was wide open. The diner on 4th Street smelled of burnt coffee and desperation. It was the kind of place where the neon sign hummed louder than the conversation. I slid into the booth across from Kowalski. He looked like a man who had been carved out of granite and then left out in the rain for a decade. He was smoking a cigarette, ignoring the no smoking sign on the wall. The waitress knew him. She just dropped a black coffee in front of me and walked away. Kowalski did not say hello. He just slid a thick manila envelope across the cracked Formica table. His fingers were stained with nicotine, but his eyes were sharp. They were the eyes of a man who had seen every variety of sin this city had to offer. I opened the envelope. Photographs spilled out. They were grainy, taken with a long lens, but clear enough. There was Brad. But he was not showing houses. He was not meeting clients. He was walking into a nondescript building in the warehouse district. He was sitting at a poker table, his face slick with sweat, his tie loosened. He was handing a stack of cash to a man with a neck tattoo. He is not a realtor, Clint Kowalski said, his voice like grinding gears. He lost his license 2 years ago. Ethics violation. Commingling funds. He never told his wife. I stared at the photo. My son-in-law. The man who wore 3-piece suits to Sunday dinner. He was a fraud. A jobless fraud playing pretend while my daughter paid the bills. It gets worse, Kowalski said. He took a drag of his cigarette. He is not just unemployed. He is a whale, a bad one. He bets on everything. Horses, football, underground poker. He owes people. Bad people. How much, I asked. 200,000, Kowalski said. And that is just the principle. The VIG is killing him. The people he owes, they do not send late notices. They send guys with baseball bats. That is why he is selling the condo. It is not for profit. It is for survival. He has a deadline. Friday. If he does not pay by Friday, they are going to break his legs, or worse. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. My daughter and grandson were sleeping next to a man who had a target on his back. Brad was not just a thief. He was a drowning man pulling everyone down with him. He has been living off your daughter's salary and skimming from her savings for years, Kowalski continued. But the well ran dry. That is why he forced the signature. He needed a big score to clear the books. I looked at the photos again. Brad looked terrified in every single one. He looked like a rat trapped in a corner. But then I saw the next photo in the stack. It was Brad sitting in a car. A nice car. A Mercedes. And he was not alone. Patricia was in the passenger seat. I picked up the photo. They were arguing. Patricia looked angry. She was pointing a finger at him. I thought she didn't know I said. I thought she was just protecting her son. Kowalski laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. That is the kicker, Clint. She knows. She has known the whole time. She is not protecting him. She is partnering with him. He pulled out a transcript of text messages. He had cloned Brad's phone. I did not ask how. I did not want to know. I just read. The texts were from Patricia to Brad. Did you get the signature yet? The guy is asking for the money. Don't be soft, Brad. She is stupid. She won't read it. Just give her the pills. When you sell the place, I want $50,000 for the new Lexus. You promised me. I felt the blood drain from my face. Patricia Miller, the woman who quoted scripture, the woman who judged my daughter for not ironing Brad's shirts perfectly. She was the architect. She was the one pushing him. She was the one telling him to drug his wife. And she wanted a cut. She wanted a new car paid for with the proceeds of my daughter's homelessness. There is one more thing, Kowalski said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was a receipt, a pawn shop receipt. Patricia went to the pawn shop on Decatur Street yesterday morning, Kowalski said. Right after they kicked Jasmine out. She sold a jewelry box. I grabbed the receipt. The description of the items made my vision blur. A gold locket with a photo inside, a pearl necklace with a diamond clasp, a vintage sapphire ring. Those were my mother's, I whispered. My voice trembled. I gave them to Jasmine on her wedding day. They were heirlooms. They survived the Great Depression. They survived the Civil Rights Movement. They were the only things my mother had to leave behind. Patricia sold them for $4,000, Kowalski said softly. She used the money to put a deposit on that Lexus. I crumpled the receipt in my fist. The rage was different now. It was not hot. It was absolute zero. It was the kind of cold that snaps steel. Patricia Miller had not just stolen property, she had stolen history. She had taken the legacy of a black woman who scrubbed floors for 50 years and traded it for a down payment on a luxury car. She looked at my family's heritage and saw nothing but quick cash. Can we get them back, I asked. I put a hold on the items, Kowalski said. I know the pawnbroker. He will keep them safe for a week. But you have to buy them back. I will buy them back, I said. And then I am going to make her pay for every single penny. I left the diner with the envelope tucked inside my jacket. The drive home was a blur. I kept seeing Patricia's face. I kept hearing Brad's laughter. They were monsters, but they were monsters disguised as regular people, and that made them dangerous. I got home just before dawn. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and turned on the light. Jasmine was sitting at the table. She was wrapped in a blanket staring at a mug of cold tea. She looked up when I came in. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Where did you go, Daddy?" she asked. I sat down across from her. I put the envelope on the table. I did not sugarcoat it. I did not protect her. She needed to see the rot. I found out why Brad kicked you out, I said. He was stressed, Jasmine said quickly. Her voice was thin and high. He has been under so much pressure at work. The market is tough. He didn't mean to hurt us. He just snapped. He loves me, Daddy. He really does. He is just going through a hard time. I watched her face. I saw the fear. I saw the desperation to believe the lie. It was a trauma bond. I had read about it. She was addicted to the cycle of abuse. She had been conditioned to make excuses for him. She had been trained to blame herself for his cruelty. If she admitted he was a monster, she had to admit she had married one. And that was too painful. He does not have a job, Jasmine, I said. He lost his license 2 years ago. That is not true, she said, shaking her head. He goes to the office every day. He has clients. He goes to the track, I said. He gambles. He owes $200,000 to loan sharks. That is why he stole the apartment. He needs to sell it to pay his debts before they hurt him. You are lying, she whispered. She stood up, knocking the chair over. Why are you trying to ruin my marriage? You never liked him. You never gave him a chance. I opened the envelope. I spread the photos on the table. Brad at the casino. Brad with the bookie. The texts from Patricia. And this, I said, slamming the pawn shop receipt onto the wood. Your mother-in-law sold your grandmother's jewelry yesterday. She sold your heritage to buy a car. Jasmine looked at the receipt. She touched the paper. A sapphire ring. The words seemed to float in front of her eyes. She started to shake. No, she moaned. No, she wouldn't. She promised she would keep them safe while we moved. She sold them, Jasmine, I said. She stole from you. Brad stole from you. They do not love you. They are using you. You are a resource to them. You are a piggy bank to be broken open. Jasmine squeezed her eyes shut. She covered her ears. Stop it, she screamed. Stop it. He is my husband. He is Leo's father. He is a good man deep down. He just needs help. If I can just talk to him, if I can just explain that we can fix this together. She was not hearing me. The truth was too big. It was too sharp. She was retreating into the fantasy because the reality was a cliff edge she could not face. She wanted to go back to him. I could see it in her posture. She wanted to go back to the abuser because the unknown was more terrifying than the pain she knew. I realized then that logic would not save my daughter. Evidence would not save her. She was drowning and she was fighting the lifeguard. If I tried to pull her out gently, she would drag us both down. I had to be the villain. I had to become the thing she hated so she would run away from the thing that would kill her. I had to break her heart to save her life. I stood up. I loomed over the table. I made my face hard. I let the engineer take over. No emotion. Just cold, hard angles. You want to go back to him? I asked. My voice was a growl. Yes, she sobbed. We can work it out. Fine, I said. Go. But leave Leo here. What? She gasped. You can go back to the gutter, I said. You can go back to the man who drugged you and robbed you. You can go sleep in a van if that is what you think you deserve. But you are not taking my grandson. You can't do that, she screamed. He is my son. I will call social services, I said. I will show them these photos. I will show them the police report from last night. I will tell them you are an unfit mother who wants to take a child back to a drug addict and a gambler who owes money to the mob. I will take custody, Jasmine, and you will never see him again. She looked at me with horror. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was the monster. Daddy. How could you? She whispered. I am not your daddy right now, I said. I am Leo's grandfather, and I will burn the whole world down to keep him safe, even if I have to burn you with it. It was the hardest thing I had ever said. It felt like swallowing broken glass. But I saw the shift in her eyes. The fantasy shattered. The fear of losing her son was stronger than her addiction to her husband. The shock of my cruelty forced her to look at the reality of her situation. She was not a wife trying to save a marriage anymore. She was a mother fighting for her child. I hate you, she hissed. Good, I said. Hate me, but stay here. She ran to the guest room and slammed the door. I heard her sobbing. I heard her cursing my name. I sat down at the kitchen table. I put my head in my hands. I was trembling. I had just declared war on my own daughter to save her. I had become the bad guy. But it worked. She was still here. She was not with Brad. Now I had to finish it. I had to take away the reason for her pain. I had to destroy Brad Miller so completely that there was nothing left for her to go back to. I picked up the phone. I called Kowalski back. What is the next move? Kowalski asked. We are going to play a game, I said. Brad wants to sell the house to pay his debts. I am going to let him think he won. And then I am going to introduce him to the new owner. I looked at the text messages again. Patricia wanted a Lexus. Brad wanted freedom. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. Rope. Enough rope to hang themselves. The time for lawsuits was over. It was time for a controlled demolition, and I was going to let them push the plunger. I sat in my truck outside the house and stared at the phone in my hand. It was a burner phone I had bought at the corner store. I could not risk them blocking my number. I had to become something I despised. I had to become a beggar. I had to become the weak, defeated old man they thought I was. It went against every fiber of my being. I was a man who built skyscrapers. I was a man who commanded crews of 200 workers. But today, I had to be a man who had lost. I dialed Brad's number. My hand was shaking not from fear but from the effort of holding back my rage. He answered on the second ring. "Who is this?" he asked. "It is Clint," I said. My voice was low and raspy. I pitched it to sound tired. I pitched it to sound broken. "I told you not to call me," Brad said. "I will call the police again." "Please," I said. I forced the word out. "Just listen. You won, Brad. You won. I talked to a lawyer. She said the paper is legal. She said we cannot fight it. We do not have the money for a lawsuit." There was a silence on the line, then a short, sharp laugh. "Finally came to your senses, did you?" Brad said. "I told you it was ironclad." I looked at the steering wheel. I imagined it was his neck. "I need a favor," I said. "Jasmine is in a bad way. The boy is sick. I do not have much savings. I know you are selling the apartment. I saw the listing." "Yeah, I got a cash offer this morning," Brad said. "We are closing in 2 days, fast and clean." I swallowed my pride. It tasted like bile. "Look, Brad, you are going to make $400,000. I am just asking for a little bit. 5,000. Just enough to get Jasmine a rental. Just enough to get her on her feet. She is the mother of your child, please." I waited. I let the silence stretch. I knew Brad. I knew his ego. He needed to feel generous. He needed to feel like the king throwing crumbs to the peasants. 5,000, he mused. "That is a lot of money for people like you." "It is nothing to you now," I said. "Please, just meet me. Let us talk. I will sign whatever you want. I will sign a paper saying we will never bother you again." That got his attention. He wanted insurance. He wanted to make sure we stayed gone. "Okay," he said. "Meet me at the Roasted Bean in Buckhead in an hour. And bring the begging bowl. My mother will be there too. She wants to see you grovel." I hung up the phone. I took a deep breath. I felt dirty, but I also felt the cold satisfaction of a trap snapping shut. They were coming. They were coming to gloat, and they were going to walk right into the kill zone. I drove to Buckhead. It was the wealthy part of town. The part of town where the police did not harass you if you drove a Mercedes but followed you if you drove a truck like mine. I parked around the corner. I checked the voice recorder in my shirt pocket. It was a high-fidelity digital recorder, the kind I used to record site inspections. It could pick up a whisper from 20 feet away. I tapped it once to make sure the light was on, then I taped over the light with black electrical tape. I walked into the coffee shop. It smelled of roasted beans and expensive perfume. The clientele was mostly white, mostly rich, and mostly ignoring me. I saw them in the back corner. They had chosen a booth by the window so they could be seen. Patricia was wearing a cream-colored suit and pearls. Brad was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, showing off muscles he had not earned. They looked like royalty holding court. I walked over to them. I hunched my shoulders. I kept my eyes on the floor. I shuffled. I played the part. "Sit down," Clint, Patricia said. She did not smile. She looked at me like I was a stain on the upholstery. I sat. The booth was tight. I could smell Brad's cologne. It was strong and musky. "You look terrible," Brad said. "Living with that junkie daughter of yours must be rough." "She is not a junkie," I said softly. "She was in pain from surgery." Patricia scoffed. She took a sip of her latte. "Please, we know what she is. We tried to help her. We tried to give her structure. But you people just do not know how to handle money or responsibility. It is cultural, I suppose." I gripped the edge of the table. The recorder was running. I needed them to say it. I needed them to be specific. "I just want to help her," I said. "You are selling the apartment. That is her home. I bought that place. It is Brad's home," Patricia corrected. "And he is selling it to invest in his future, a future that does not include dragging dead weight." I looked at Brad. He was smirking. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying seeing the man he used to fear reduced to begging. "About the money," I said. "Write the handout," Brad said. He leaned back, spreading his arms. "You want 5 grand? It would help us," I said. "And in exchange you disappear," Brad said. "You and Jasmine and the kid. I do not want to see you. I do not want to hear from you." "We will go," I said. "But Brad, I have to ask. How did you get her to sign that paper? She does not remember doing it. She swears she didn't know what it was." Brad laughed. He looked at his mother. They shared a look of pure malice. She didn't know what day it was, Brad said, leaning in close. His voice dropped, but it was clear. The recorder would catch every syllable. She was high as a kite on those oxys. I told her they were insurance forms. I told her if she didn't sign the hospital would sue us. She would have signed her own death warrant if I put it in front of her. She was drooling on the pillow. It was pathetic. So you tricked her, I said. I needed him to confirm it. I managed the situation, Brad said. I took advantage of an opportunity. That is business. It was necessary, Patricia added. She placed a hand on Brad's arm. We needed that asset liquid. Brad has obligations. And quite frankly, Jasmine did not deserve to live there. She is lazy, she is ungrateful, and she is weak, just like you. I looked at Patricia. You knew I asked. You knew he drugged her legal documents. I told him to do it, she said. Her voice was crisp and unapologetic. I told him to stop waiting for permission. You have to take what is yours in this world, Clint. Nobody gives it to you. I told him to get the signature while she was pliable. It was the only way to get rid of her without a messy divorce dragging on for years. We secured the asset. That is just smart financial planning. Secured the asset, I repeated, by lying to your wife while she was medicated. Brad rolled his eyes. Stop being so dramatic. It is done. The apartment is sold. The money is coming to me. And you are here begging for scraps. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote a check with a flourish. He tore it out and slid it across the table. Here, he said, $5,000. Consider it severance pay. Take your daughter and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. If I see you again, I will have you arrested for harassment. I looked at the check. It was drawn on a personal account that I knew was empty. Or it would be until the house sale went through. It was a worthless piece of paper from a man who lived on debt. I reached out and took the check. My hand did not shake this time. Thank you, Brad, I said. Don't spend it all on booze, Patricia said. I stood up. I did not hunch my shoulders. I stood to my full height. I am 6'4". I have lifted steel beams that weigh more than Brad's car. I let the mask slip, just for a second. I looked at Brad and I let him see the engineer. I let him see the man who calculates collapse. His smile faltered. He shifted in his seat. What are you looking at, old man? He asked. I am just looking at the structure, I said. What structure? The house of cards, I said. I turned and walked away. I did not look back. I heard Patricia mutter something about me being ungrateful, but I did not care. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the bright sunlight. I walked to my truck. I sat inside and pulled the recorder out of my pocket. I put on my headphones and pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. She was high as a kite. I told her they were insurance forms. I told him to do it. I told him to get the signature while she was pliable. I had it. I had the confession. I had the conspiracy. I had the admission of fraud and elder influence. Even if Jasmine wasn't elderly, Patricia's influence over Brad was clear. But more importantly, I had proof that the sale of the apartment was based on a criminal act. I started the truck. I was not going to the police. Not yet. The police would take a report. They would file it. It would get lost in the system. I had a better idea. Brad said he had a cash buyer closing in 2 days. He was desperate for that money. He needed it to pay off the sharks. I drove toward the office of Kowalski. It was time to introduce a new variable into Brad's equation. I looked at the check on the seat beside me. $5,000. I was going to frame it. I was going to hang it on the wall of the house I was going to buy with the ruins of Brad Miller's life. He thought he had bought my silence. He had just bought his own destruction. The surrender was fake. The warhead I was carrying was very real, and I was about to detonate it right in the middle of his closing ceremony. I woke up to a sound that no grandfather ever wants to hear. It was a wet, rattling gasp coming from the guest room. I was out of bed before my feet even touched the floor. I ran down the hallway. The wood floor was cold, but I did not feel it. I threw open the door. Jasmine was already awake. She was sitting up in bed holding Leo. He was thrashing. His skin was gray in the moonlight. He was fighting for every breath. I touched his forehead. It burned my hand. The heat radiating off that little boy could have welded steel. We have to go, I said, now. Jasmine did not argue. She was terrified. She wrapped him in the quilt. I grabbed my keys. We ran out to the truck. The night air was heavy and damp. It was the kind of air that makes it hard to breathe even if you are healthy. For a child whose lungs are filled with fluid, it must have felt like drowning. I drove fast. I ran 2 red lights. I did not care. I watched the road, but my mind was in the back seat. I could hear Leo wheezing. It sounded like a broken bellows. It was the sound of the 3 nights they spent sleeping in a van in the rain. It was the sound of Brad Miller's cruelty manifesting in my grandson's chest. We pulled into the emergency bay of Grady Memorial. I carried Leo in. Jasmine was right beside me holding his hand. The fluorescent lights were blinding. The smell of antiseptic and rubbing alcohol hit us like a wall. Nurses swarmed us. They took one look at Leo's blue lips and they moved fast. They put him on a gurney. They put an oxygen mask over his face. They wheeled him behind the double doors. Jasmine tried to follow, but a security guard held her back. "You have to wait here, ma'am," he said. "Let them work." We stood there in the waiting room. It was chaos. People were bleeding. People were screaming. But all I could hear was the silence where my grandson used to be. Jasmine was shaking. She looked like she was about to collapse. I put my arm around her. I held her up. I was the pillar. I had to be. But inside I was terrified. I had built bridges that could withstand earthquakes. I had designed towers that could survive hurricanes. But I could not fix a 5-year-old boy's lungs. A nurse came out with a clipboard. She looked tired. She looked like she had seen too much sorrow for one night. "Are you the family of Leo Miller?" she asked. "Yes," I said. I stepped forward. "We need to process his admission," she said. "He has acute pneumonia. His oxygen levels are critically low. We are stabilizing him, but we need his insurance information." Jasmine fumbled with her purse. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped her wallet. I picked it up. I pulled out the insurance card. It was a blue card from a major provider. Brad had added them to his policy when they got married. It was the one decent thing he had done. Or so I thought. I handed the card to the nurse. She typed the numbers into the computer. She frowned. She typed them again. She shook her head. "Sir, this policy is inactive," she said. "That is impossible," Jasmine said, her voice rising in panic. "It is a family plan. Brad pays it every month." The nurse turned the screen so we could see. In big red letters it said terminated. The policy was canceled on Tuesday, the nurse said. The primary policyholder removed the dependents. Tuesday, the day he kicked them out, the day he changed the locks. Brad Miller had not just evicted his family, he had stripped them of their medical protection. He had looked at the weather forecast, saw the rain, and decided that his son did not need a doctor. He had calculated the cost of the premium and decided that saving a few $100s was worth risking his child's life. I felt a rage so pure it almost blinded me. It was not the hot anger of a fight. It was the cold, absolute fury of a judge passing a death sentence. This was not negligence. This was attempted murder by bureaucracy. "We need a payment method on file," the nurse said gently. "If there is no insurance, we have to ask for a deposit or a credit card. The ICU costs are significant." I pulled out my black wallet. I handed her my credit card, the one with the limit that could buy a small house. "Charge it," I said. "Do whatever he needs. Do not spare a dime." The nurse nodded and went back to work. Jasmine stood there staring at the screen that said, "Terminated." She looked like she had been punched in the gut. "He canceled it," she whispered. "He canceled Leo's insurance." I did not say anything. I just led her to a chair. I sat her down. I needed to make a call. I needed to hear him say it. I needed to know there was no mistake. I walked out to the ambulance bay. The air was cool. I dialed Brad's number. It was 6 in the morning. He answered on the 4th ring. He sounded groggy but alert. He was probably getting ready for his big closing day, the day he sold the apartment he stole. "What do you want, Clint?" he asked. "I thought we had an understanding. You got your $5,000. Leo is in the hospital," I said. My voice was steady. It was the calm before the demolition. "He has pneumonia. He can't breathe." There was a pause, a short silence. Then Brad sighed. It was an annoyed sigh, the sigh of a man interrupted by a telemarketer. "Kids get sick, Clint," he said. "He will be fine." "Why are you calling me?" "The insurance is canceled," I said. "The hospital says you cut them off on Tuesday." Brad laughed. It was a short, nervous bark. "Well, yeah. I am cutting costs. I am liquidating assets. I cannot pay premiums for people who do not live in my house. It is just business. Besides, Jasmine can get Medicaid or whatever it is you people use. I am not a charity. He is your son," I said. "He is in the ICU. They need the policy number to authorize a treatment. Reincarnate the policy, Brad." just for today. I can't do that, Brad snapped. I am busy. I have a closing in 2 hours. I have investors coming to the apartment. I have to make sure the place is staged. I do not have time to sit on the phone with an insurance company. Look, if he is really sick, just pay for it out of the $5,000 I gave you. That should cover some aspirin. He hung up. The line went dead. I stood there in the ambulance bay holding the phone. I looked at the screen. Call ended. He did not ask how Leo was. He did not ask what hospital we were at. He did not care. He was busy staging an apartment. He was busy selling the walls that should have protected his son. He had traded his child's health for a clean balance sheet. I turned around. Jasmine was standing in the doorway. She had followed me. She had heard everything. She was not crying anymore. Her face was dry. Her eyes were wide and dark. She looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw my daughter. Not the victim, not the wife. I saw the blood of the Jeffersons. I saw the woman who had earned a master's degree while working 2 jobs. He said no, she stated. It was not a question. He said he is busy, I said. He has a closing. Jasmine nodded slowly. She looked at the phone in my hand like it was a weapon. He does not care if Leo dies, she said. Her voice was flat, cold. No, I said. He does not. The trauma bond snapped. I could almost hear it. It sounded like a cable parting under too much tension. The illusion was gone. The hope was gone. The excuses were gone. There was only the truth. Brad Miller was a parasite who would let his son suffocate to save a buck. Jasmine walked over to me. She took my hand. Her grip was strong. Destroy him, Daddy, she said. I looked at her. I saw the steel in her spine. Do it, she said. Take the house. Take the money. Take everything. Leave him with nothing. I want him to feel what it is like to be out in the rain. I nodded. I did not need to say a word. I took my phone back. I dialed Sarah Jenkins. It was early, but she would answer. She was a shark, and sharks do not sleep. Sarah, I said when she picked up. Clint, she said. It is 6 a.m. What is wrong? Activate the LLC clause, I said. Initiate the hidden owner protocol. Are you sure, she asked. We were going to wait for the injunction. No waiting, I said. Brad is closing today. He has buyers coming at 9. I want the assets frozen. I want the title cloud active. And Sarah, yes, I want you to call the sheriff. Tell them we have a trespassing situation. Tell them we have an unauthorized sale of corporate property. You are going. Nuclear, Sarah said. Her voice sounded excited. No, I said. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the doors of the emergency room where my grandson was fighting for air. I am just doing a structural correction. I hung up. I put the phone in my pocket. I hugged my daughter. We stood there for a moment, gathering our strength. Then we walked back inside to sit with Leo. Brad Miller was getting ready for his big day. He was putting on his suit. He was checking his hair in the mirror. He thought he was a winner. He thought he had outsmarted the old black man. He did not know that the ground beneath his feet had already been liquefied. He did not know that the check he was waiting for was never coming. He did not know that by the time the sun went down, he would wish he had never met the Jefferson family. I sat by Leo's bed and watched the monitor beep. Every beep was a countdown. Not for Leo. He was strong. He would survive. The countdown was for Brad. And it was ticking toward 0. I sat in the passenger seat of Sarah Jenkins' black sedan as we sped toward downtown Atlanta. The rain had stopped, but the roads were still slick. Sarah was driving with one hand on the wheel and the other holding a file folder. She was smiling. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted a wounded gazelle. We had stopped by the courthouse to pick up the emergency writ, and now we were heading to the execution. I looked at the documents in my lap. They were the blueprints of the trap I had built 2 years ago. When I bought the apartment for Jasmine, I did not just write a check and hand over the deed. I was an engineer. I knew that you never build a structure without a fail-safe mechanism. You are a genius, Sarah said, tapping the steering wheel. Do you know how many people forget to do this? Most parents just put the house in the kid's name and hope for the best. I learned a long time ago that hope is not a strategy, I said. I looked at the papers again. The apartment was not owned by Jasmine Miller. It was not owned by Brad Miller. It was owned by Jefferson Holdings, LLC, a limited liability company I had formed the day before the closing. I was the sole managing member. Jasmine had a lifetime lease with a rent of $1 a year. The lease had a specific clause, Clause 4B. It stated that residency was contingent upon the property being her primary dwelling. If she vacated the premises for more than 24 hours without written notice to the landlord, the lease was void and possession reverted immediately to the LLC. Brad was so arrogant he never checked the title history, Sarah said. He saw Jasmine living there. He saw the utility bills in her name. He assumed she owned the fee simple title. He is lazy, I said. He looks at the surface. He never checks the foundation. The quitclaim deed he forced her to sign is worthless, Sarah continued, her voice filled with professional glee. It is a piece of paper transferring rights she never had. She cannot transfer the title because she never held the title. She only held the lease. All Brad did was force her to sign a document that proves he committed fraud. He tried to sell the Brooklyn Bridge and he signed his name to the receipt. And because he kicked her out, I said, looking at the city skyline approaching. Because he kicked her out, he triggered Clause 4B. Sarah finished. He evicted the legal tenant. That voided the lease. The property reverted to Jefferson Holdings LLC 3 days ago. Brad is not the owner. He is not the landlord. He is a squatter. And he is trying to sell a building he is currently trespassing in. We pulled up to the curb in front of the high-rise. A sheriff's cruiser was already there waiting for us. 2 deputies stood by the revolving doors. They looked bored. They did not know they were about to walk into a circus. I got out of the car. I adjusted my jacket. I felt the weight of the hammer in my hand. It was time to bring the house down. We walked into the lobby. The concierge tried to stop us, but Sarah flashed the court order. The deputies fell in step behind us. We took the elevator to the penthouse. I watched the numbers climb. Each floor was a tick of the clock counting down to Brad Miller's destruction. The elevator doors opened, and the noise hit us. It was the sound of a party. There was jazz music playing. There was the clinking of glasses. Brad was not just showing the apartment, he was hosting a gala. He wanted to show these cash investors that he was a man of substance. He wanted to dazzle them with champagne and views so they would not ask why he was selling $1 million asset for pennies on the dollar. I walked into the open living room. The apartment was staged to perfection. There were fresh flowers on the granite island. The floor-to-ceiling windows let in the morning light. There were about 20 people in the room, men in suits, women in designer dresses, vultures looking for a deal. Patricia was in the center of the room holding court. She was wearing a new dress probably bought with the money from my mother's jewelry. She was laughing, throwing her head back. Brad was by the window shaking hands with a man who looked like he paid in cash and asked no questions. I stepped into the center of the room. The deputies flanked me. Sarah stood to my right holding the file like a weapon. "Turn off the music," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the chatter like a knife. The room went silent. Heads turned. Patricia froze mid-laugh. Brad looked up from the contract he was holding. His face went from smug to pale in a single heartbeat. "Clint," he stammered. "What are you doing here?" "I told you." "Get out," I said. "Excuse me," Patricia said, stepping forward. Her face was flushed with anger. "You are trespassing. Officer, arrest this man." The deputy stepped forward. He did not look at me. He looked at Brad. "Are you Bradley Miller?" the deputy asked. "Yes," Brad said, straightening his tie. "And I want these people removed. This is a private event." "Sir, you are the one who needs to leave," the deputy said. "We have a court order here stating that this property belongs to Jefferson Holdings LLC and that you are occupying it illegally." The room erupted in whispers. The investors looked at each other. The man Brad was shaking hands with pulled his hand back like he had touched a hot stove. "That is a lie," Brad shouted. His voice cracked. "My wife owns this place. She signed it over to me. I have the deed right here." He waved the crumpled paper in the air, the same paper he had taunted me with the night before. Sarah stepped forward. She did not yell. She spoke with the cold precision of a surgeon. "That is a quitclaim deed, Mr. Miller," Sarah said. "It transfers only the interest the signer possesses. Your wife possessed a lease that was voided the moment you locked her out. The title belongs to Mr. Jefferson's company. You are trying to sell property you do not own. That is a felony fraud." Brad looked at the paper in his hand. Then he looked at me. He looked at the walls. He looked at the view. He realized for the first time that the walls were not protecting him. They were closing in. But he whispered, "But I have a buyer. We are closing today." The buyer, a short man with a thick neck, stepped forward. He grabbed the contract from the table. "Is this true?" he asked Brad. "Do you not own the title?" "It is a technicality," Brad said, sweat beading on his forehead. "My lawyer said." "I do not care what your lawyer said," the buyer growled. "I gave you a $10,000 cash deposit this morning. Where is it?" Brad swallowed hard. I spent it, he said. I mean, I used it to pay for the staging. You spent my deposit, the buyer shouted. His face turned purple. You spent my money on flowers and champagne when you do not even own the brick and mortar. The other investors started backing away toward the door. They smelled the stink of failure. They smelled the fraud. Patricia tried to stop them. Please stay, she pleaded, grabbing a woman's arm. It is just a misunderstanding. My son is a professional. Get off me, the woman snapped, shaking her off. This is a scam. I am calling the Better Business Bureau. The room emptied fast. In 2 minutes, it was just me, Sarah, the deputies, and the Miller family. The silence was heavy. The jazz music was still playing softly in the background, a mocking soundtrack to their ruin. Brad sank onto the sofa. He looked small. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar. But this was not a cookie jar. This was a felony. You set me up, he whispered. You knew. I did not set you up, Brad, I said. I just let you be yourself. You are a thief. You are a liar. And you are not very smart. You tried to steal a house from an engineer. Did you really think I would not secure the foundation? Patricia walked over to her son. She slapped him across the face. The sound echoed in the empty room. You idiot, she hissed. You told me it was done. You told me the papers were solid. He lied to you too, Patricia, I said. Or maybe you just heard what you wanted to hear because you wanted that Lexus so bad. Patricia turned on me. Her eyes were wild. You cannot kick us out. We have rights. We have lived here for 2 years. This is our domicile. You are guests, Sarah corrected. And your invitation has been revoked. You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises. After that, the sheriff will remove you physically. I walked over to the kitchen island. I picked up a bottle of champagne. It was expensive, probably bought with my credit card. I poured the contents into the sink. Brad, I said. He looked up. His eyes were dead. You took a deposit from that man, I said. $10,000. You spent it. I needed to pay the bookie, Brad mumbled. He said he would break my thumbs. Well, I said, now you owe the bookie. And you owe that investor $10,000. And you have no house to sell. And you have no job. And in about 10 minutes you are going to be on the street. I leaned in close. How does it feel, I asked. How does it feel to be homeless? He did not answer. He just started to cry. It was a pathetic sound. The deputies stepped forward. Let us go, folks, the senior deputy said. Grab what you can carry. The locks are being changed now. Brad stood up. He grabbed a duffel bag. He started throwing things into it. His laptop, a few shirts, a bottle of scotch. Patricia grabbed her purse. She tried to maintain her dignity, but it was hard to look regal when you are being evicted by the police. They walked to the door. I stood in the center of the room. I watched them go. Wait, I said. They stopped. They turned around. Hope flickered in Brad's eyes. Leave the keys, I said. Brad dug into his pocket. He pulled out the key ring, the one with the Mercedes fob, the one to the apartment he thought he stole. He threw them on the floor. I hope you rot in this place, he spat. I am not going to live here, Brad, I said. I am going to sell it. And I am going to use the money to pay for the best divorce lawyer in Atlanta. Jasmine is going to take everything you have left, which by my calculation is absolutely nothing. The deputy put a hand on Brad's shoulder and shoved him into the hallway. Patricia followed her heels, clicking on the marble floor. The heavy oak door slammed shut. I was alone in the apartment. The silence was absolute. I walked to the window. I looked down at the street. I saw them walk out of the lobby. I saw them standing on the sidewalk arguing. I saw the investor waiting for them by the curb. His arms crossed his face, angry. They were in the rain now. They were exposed. The walls were gone. The roof was gone. The structure had failed. I turned away from the window. I had to get back to the hospital. Leo was fighting for his life, and I had just won the first battle to ensure he had a life worth fighting for. The hidden claw had struck, and it had left deep marks. But the beast was not dead yet. Brad was cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous. I thought I had won the battle at the penthouse, but I had forgotten that a cornered animal does not just bite, it screams for help. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking black coffee and watching the rain streak against the window when my phone buzzed. It was Sarah Jenkins. Her text was short. Do not look at Facebook. Do not look at the news. Just call me. I called her immediately. Her voice was tight. Clint, she said. Patricia Miller just went live. It is everywhere. I hung up and opened my laptop. I did not have social media accounts, but I knew how to find things. It was not hard. It was trending locally. A video titled "Grandmother Assaulted by Daughter-in-Law's Father." I clicked play. The video was shot in a car. Patricia was sitting in the passenger seat of what looked like a rental. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was not wearing the pearl necklace she had on yesterday. She looked small. She looked fragile. She looked like the victim of a terrible crime. "Please help us," she sobbed into the camera. "My name is Patricia Miller. Yesterday a man named Clinton Jefferson broke into my son's home. He had armed men with him. They threw us out on the street. He threatened to kill my son Brad. He raised his hand to me. I watched in silence as she wove a tapestry of lies so intricate it was almost beautiful in its ugliness. She talked about Jasmine, but it was not the Jasmine I knew. We tried to help his daughter. Patricia cried, wiping her nose with a tissue. Jasmine has been struggling with addiction for years. We gave her a home. We paid for her rehab, but she stole from us. She stole jewelry. She stole money. Brad tried to save her, but her father enabled her, and now he has stolen our home to sell it for drug money. We are homeless. We have nothing. Please, if you have any Christian charity in your hearts, help us fight this injustice." She ended the video with a link to a GoFundMe page titled "Help the Miller Family Recover." It had been up for 3 hours. It had already raised $8,000. I sat back in my chair. The anger I felt was different this time. It was not the cold rage of the engineer. It was the hot, burning fury of a father watching his child's reputation being murdered in public. Jasmine was in the guest room sleeping after a night of watching Leo breathe. She had never touched a drug in her life. She was a teacher. She was a mother. And Patricia was painting her as a junkie to cover up her own crimes. I looked at the comments below the video. That was my mistake. Never look at the comments. They were a sewer. Thousands of strangers weighing in on a life they knew nothing about. But there was a pattern. A distinct, ugly pattern. "These people are animals," one comment read. "Always taking what isn't theirs." "That poor woman," another wrote. "She tries to help and gets attacked by a thug. Someone needs to go teach that old man a lesson," a third one said. "I know where he lives." I looked up the tax records. I stood up and walked to the window. A car slowed down in front of my house. A dark sedan. The driver looked at my house, then sped away. The phone started ringing. It was not Sarah. It was a number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. My home line started ringing. They had doxed me. Patricia had unleashed the mob. She knew exactly what she was doing. She played the role of the terrified white grandmother perfectly. She knew the narrative would stick. An angry black man evicting a white family. She weaponized her tears, and she weaponized the racial prejudice that simmered just beneath the surface of this city. I unplugged the home phone. I turned off my cell. I walked to the guest room and checked on Jasmine. She was still asleep. Leo was breathing easier. I gently closed the door. I had to protect them from this. If Jasmine saw that video, it would break her. If she saw the things people were saying about her, she might never recover. But the pressure was building. I could feel it against the walls of my house. I went to the front door and locked the deadbolt. I checked the windows. I felt like a prisoner in the home I had built with my own hands. My reputation meant nothing to these people. My 40 years of hard work meant nothing. To them, I was just a violent stereotype. I heard a loud thud against the front siding of the house, then the sound of glass breaking. I ran to the living room. A brick was sitting on my rug, surrounded by shattered glass. Attached to it was a note, "Leave them alone, or else." I looked through the broken window. A truck was peeling away, tires screeching. They were attacking my home. They were threatening my family. I picked up the brick. It was heavy, rough. It was a tool of destruction. But I knew how to use tools. I did not call the police. The police would take a report. They would say it was a civil dispute escalating. They would tell me to stay inside. They would not stop the mob. To stop the mob, you have to cut off the head of the snake. You have to prove that the victim is actually the villain. I went to my safe. I took out a laptop I used for secure consulting work. I logged into a server that did not track my location. I typed an email to Kowalski. She went public. She is lying. I need dirt. Not just the gambling. I need her dirt. Follow the money. Kowalski replied in 3 minutes. I am already on it. I saw the video. She is a piece of work. I have been digging into her financials since yesterday. I found something, Clint, something big. What is it I typed? She is the treasurer for the Ladies' Auxiliary at First Baptist, Kowalski wrote. She handles the charity fund, the one for orphans and widows. And I typed, and the math does not add up, Kowalski replied. She has been driving a Mercedes for 3 years. She wears designer clothes. but she has no income. Brad has been broke for 2 years. Where is the money coming from? I stared at the screen. Embezzlement. It fit. It fit perfectly. Patricia Miller was a woman who needed to maintain an image. She needed to look wealthy. She needed to look benevolent. And she was stealing from the church to do it. Get me the ledgers, I typed. Get me the bank statements. Get me everything. I need a few hours, Kowalski wrote. I have a contact at the bank who owes me a favor. But Clint, this is federal. If we expose this, she goes away for a long time. Good, I typed. Make it happen. I closed the laptop. I looked at the brick on my floor. I looked at the broken window. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Patricia wanted a public fight. She wanted to use the court of public opinion. She thought she was untouchable because she was a nice old lady who went to church. She did not know that numbers do not care about your image. Numbers do not care about your tears. Numbers do not care about your race or your social standing. Numbers only care about the truth. I went to the garage. I got a piece of plywood and my drill. I covered the broken window. I swept up the glass. I made sure Jasmine and Leo did not wake up. Then I sat in my kitchen and I waited. I waited for Kowalski to send me the ammunition. Patricia had fired a shotgun blast of lies. I was going to fire a sniper round of truth. She wanted to talk about stealing. She wanted to talk about charity. Fine, we would talk about it. But we were not going to talk about my daughter. We were going to talk about the $50,000 missing from the orphan fund. We were going to talk about the withdrawals made at casinos. We were going to talk about the checks written to cash. The mob was outside my door screaming for justice. I was going to give it to them, but I was going to change the target. My phone buzzed again. It was Sarah. Clint, are you okay? I saw the comments. I am fine, I texted back. Get the defamation suit ready and call the district attorney. Tell him we have a tip about a charity fraud. What do you have? Sarah asked. I have the receipt, I typed. Patricia Miller had made a fatal error. She thought she could hide behind the cross, but she forgot that even Judas got caught because of the money. She was about to learn that you cannot pray away a paper trail. I poured another cup of coffee. The sun was setting, the night was coming, and in the darkness I was going to shine a light so bright it would burn her eyes out. The retaliation was over. The counteroffensive had begun. The rain had started again. It was a cold, relentless drizzle that soaked into the bones of the city. I sat in my truck 2 blocks from the penthouse watching the lights blazing in the windows. It was Saturday night. Brad and Patricia had done the unthinkable. They had broken back into the apartment. I had to give them credit for audacity. They had hired a locksmith who did not ask questions, paid him double to drill the new locks, and were now hosting what they called a housewarming party. But Kowalski told me the truth. It was a show for the creditors. Brad had invited the loan sharks, the bookies, the people he owed money to. He was trying to prove he still had the asset. He was trying to buy time by showing them he was still a player, still living the high life. He was throwing a party on the deck of the Titanic while the water was already rushing into the hold. I checked my watch. 9 o'clock. The party was in full swing. I could see shadows moving against the light. I could imagine the scene inside. Brad pouring expensive scotch, telling lies about market fluctuations. Patricia charming the men she thought were investors, not knowing they were waiting for the right moment to break her son's legs. I picked up the small Bluetooth speaker from the passenger seat. It was a high-end model loud enough to fill a concert hall. I connected it to my phone. I checked the audio file one last time. It was ready. I did not call the police. I did not call Sarah. Tonight was not about the law. Tonight was about public execution. Tonight was about stripping away the last shreds of their dignity in front of the very people they were trying to impress. I got out of the truck. I was wearing my best suit. It was 20 years old, but it was tailored and clean. I walked to the building. The doorman tried to stop me again, but this time I did not just look at him. I handed him a $100 bill. Private party, I said. I am the entertainment. He looked at the bill, looked at me, and stepped aside. Money talks, even when it whispers. I took the elevator up. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I was not nervous. I was focused. I was a structural engineer walking into a building I was about to condemn. The door to the penthouse was unlocked. I could hear the music from the hallway. Jazz again. Smooth, sophisticated jazz masking the rot inside. I pushed the door open and walked in. The scene was almost exactly like the open house, but the crowd was different. These were not real estate investors. These were hard men with cold eyes wearing suits that cost more than my truck. They were drinking Brad's liquor and eating his catered food, but they were not smiling. They were watching him like wolves watching a limping deer. And there in the corner, holding a glass of wine, was Pastor Williams from First Baptist. He was talking to Patricia, who was beaming, looking every inch the pious church lady. She had invited the church council to legitimize the event. She was using God as a shield against the mob. Brad saw me first. He was standing by the bar pouring a drink. His hand froze. The bottle clinked against the glass. His face went white. "You," he whispered. I walked into the center of the room. I placed the speaker on the granite island. I did not say a word. I just looked at them. The music stopped. The chatter died down. The wolves turned their eyes to me, sensing fresh meat. Patricia saw me. Her smile vanished. She stepped away from the pastor, her hands fluttering to her throat. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "Get out. This is a private party." "It is a party, all right," I said, my voice calm and carrying to every corner of the room. "But I think your guests are confused, Patricia. They think they are here to celebrate your success." I looked at the hard men in the corner. "They think they are here to see the asset that is going to pay them back." Brad moved toward me. "Get out, Clint. I am warning you, or what I asked. You will call the police. Go ahead. Tell them you broke into a sealed property. Tell them you are hosting a party in a crime scene." Brad stopped. He looked at the loan sharks. He knew he could not call the cops. He was trapped. "Who is this man?" Patricia the pastor asked, stepping forward. He looked confused. "Is this the man from the video?" "That is him," Patricia cried, pointing a shaking finger at me. "That is the man who attacked us, the man who stole our home. He is dangerous, Pastor. Please make him leave." I looked at the pastor. He was a good man, but he was blind. He saw the pearls and the tears, and he believed the lie. "I am not here to attack anyone, Pastor," I said. "I am just here to play some music." I pulled out my phone. I hit play. The voice that boomed from the speaker was crystal clear. It was Brad. She was high as a kite. I told her they were insurance forms. I told her if she didn't sign, the hospital would sue us. She would have signed her own death warrant if I put it in front of her. The room went deathly silent. The wolves stopped drinking. The pastor's mouth fell open. Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Brad lunged for the speaker. "Turn it off!" he screamed. I stepped in his way. I did not hit him. I just stood there, a wall of muscle and resolve. He bounced off me like a child. The recording continued. Now it was Patricia's voice. I told him to do it. I told him to get the signature while she was pliable. We secured the asset. That is just smart financial planning. The pastor looked at Patricia. He looked like he had been slapped. Patricia Miller, the treasurer of the Ladies' Auxiliary, the woman who sat in the front pew every Sunday confessing to fraud and elder abuse on tape, and then the final nail in the coffin. "When you sell the place, I want $50,000 for the new Lexus. I deserve it for putting up with her all these years." The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I looked at the pastor. "That is your treasurer, Pastor," I said. "That is the woman who handles the orphan fund." The pastor turned to Patricia. His face was pale, his eyes wide with horror. "Patricia, is this true?" he whispered. "Did you do this?" Patricia stammered. "It is a fake," she cried. "He doctored it. It is AI. It is not real." But everyone in the room knew it was real. They heard the cadence of her voice, the arrogance she could not hide. They heard the truth ringing in every syllable. The loan sharks in the corner exchanged glances. They were not interested in the moral failings of a church lady. They were interested in one thing, the asset. One of them, a man with a scar over his eye, stepped forward. He ignored me. He ignored the pastor. He looked straight at Brad. "So you do not own the apartment?" he asked. His voice was low, gravelly. Brad was shaking. He was sweating so hard his shirt was soaked. "I do," he squeaked. "It is a legal dispute. We are sorting it out." "You told me you had the deed," the man said. "You told me the sale was closing on Friday. You told me my money was secure." "It is secure," Brad pleaded. "I just need a little more time." The man looked around the room. He looked at the expensive furniture, the flowers, the champagne. "You spent my money on a party," he said. "You spent my money trying to impress a bunch of church people in a house you do not own." He reached into his jacket. For a second I thought he was going to pull a gun, but he just pulled out a phone. He tapped a few buttons. "The deal is off," he said, "and the interest just doubled. You have 24 hours. He turned and walked out. His crew followed him. They did not look back. They did not need to. They knew where Brad lived. They knew where his mother lived. The room emptied fast after that. The church council members looked at Patricia with disgust. They backed away from her like she was contagious. "I cannot believe this," the pastor said, shaking his head. "We trusted you, Patricia. We prayed for you." Patricia tried to grab his arm. "Pastor, please let me explain." "Do not touch me," he said, pulling away. "You are removed from the council, effective immediately. We will be auditing the books on Monday." He walked out. The door closed behind him. Now it was just the four of us again. Me, Brad, Patricia, and the ruins of their reputation. Patricia sank onto the sofa. She looked old. The regal bearing was gone. She was just a tired, scared woman in a stolen apartment. "You ruined us," she whispered. "No." "Patricia," I said, picking up my speaker. "You ruined yourselves." And I just turned on the lights. Brad was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. He was rocking back and forth, muttering to himself. "They are going to kill me," he whispered. "They are going to kill me." I looked down at him. I felt no pity. I felt only the cold satisfaction of a job well done. "They might," I said, "unless you pay them." "I have no money," he sobbed. "You know I have no money." "I know," I said. I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at them. "You have 24 hours, Brad," I said. "Not because of the loan sharks, but because tomorrow morning I am coming back with the sheriff. And this time I am pressing charges for breaking and entering." I walked out into the hallway. I heard Patricia starting to scream at her son. I heard the sound of glass breaking. The party was over. The chaos had consumed them. I took the elevator down. I walked out into the night. The rain had stopped. The air was clean. I got in my truck and drove away. I had one more stop to make. One more piece of the puzzle to put in place. Brad thought his problem was the loan sharks. He was wrong. His problem was me, and I was about to become the only lifeline he had left. But the price of that lifeline was going to be everything he had ever owned or would ever own. The financial payoff was coming, and it was going to be brutal. The silence in the penthouse was different now. It was not the awkward silence of a party gone wrong. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a courtroom after a verdict has been read. The jazz music had stopped long ago. The catering staff was packing up their trays with nervous haste, trying to make themselves invisible. The few remaining guests were huddled near the door, their eyes darting between me and the ruined Miller family. They looked like people who had accidentally walked onto a stage in the middle of a tragedy and did not know their lines. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. I looked out at the city lights. I owned this view. I owned the glass. I owned the steel. And now I was going to own the people standing in my living room. I turned around. My face was a mask of granite. "Everyone out," I said. My voice was not loud, but it filled the room. It bounced off the marble floors and the granite countertops. "If your last name is not Miller, get out," I said. "You are trespassing on private property owned by Jefferson Holdings, LLC. The police are on their way to process a breaking and entering charge. If you are still here when they arrive, you will be arrested as accomplices." The reaction was immediate. There were no goodbyes. There were no apologies. The guests scrambled. Women grabbed their purses. Men left their half-finished drinks on the tables. They pushed past each other to get to the elevator. They fled like rats, sensing a ship going down. Within 2 minutes, the apartment was empty. Only 4 of us remained. Me, Sarah Jenkins, Brad, and Patricia. Brad was sitting on the floor, leaning against the kitchen island. He looked broken. His expensive suit was rumpled. His tie was loose. He was shaking uncontrollably. Patricia was sitting on the white sofa, staring at a spot on the wall. Her face was gray. The makeup she had applied so carefully for her big night was starting to crack. "You cannot do this," Patricia whispered. Her voice was thin and reedy. "This is our home. We have rights. You have nothing." "Patricia," I said, walking toward them. "You have no lease. You have no title. You have no rights. You are squatters, and you are criminals." Brad looked up at me. His eyes were red. He looked like a child who had woken up from a nightmare only to find out the monster was real. "The loan sharks," he whimpered. "You saw them, Clint. That guy with the scar. He said 24 hours. He said he would double the interest. They are going to kill me. You have to help me. Please, you have money. Pay them off. I will pay you back. I swear." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had kicked my daughter out into the rain. I looked at the man who had let my grandson gasp for air because he wanted to save money on insurance premiums. I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Pay them off, I asked. Why would I do that? Because I am the father of your grandson, Brad pleaded. If they kill me, Leo will grow up without a father. You do not want that. I walked over to Sarah. She opened her briefcase. She pulled out a thick document bound in a blue folder. She handed it to me. I weighed it in my hand. It felt heavy. It felt like justice. You are right, Brad, I said. I do not want Leo to grow up knowing his father was murdered by criminals in a back alley. That would be traumatic. So I did something about it. Brad's eyes widened. A flicker of hope ignited in them. You paid them, he asked. You paid off the debt. Not exactly, I said. I walked over to Brad and dropped the blue folder into his lap. Open it, I said. Brad opened the folder. His hands were shaking so bad he almost tore the paper. He stared at the document. He read the first page. He read the second page. He stopped. He looked up at me. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. What is this? He whispered. It is a purchase and sale agreement, I said. I turned to Patricia, who was watching us with confusion. You see, Patricia, I explained, your son owes $200,000 to a very disorganized criminal enterprise. These people are violent, but they are also businessmen. They like cash flow. They do not like chasing deadbeats. I took a step closer to Brad. I had my associate, Mr. Kowalski, contact your creditors this morning, I said. We made them an offer. We offered to buy your debt. Buy the debt, Patricia asked. What does that mean? It means I bought the note, I said. In the world of finance, bad debt is a commodity. It can be bought and sold just like a house or a car. The loan sharks knew you were broke, Brad. They knew you had no job. They knew the apartment scheme was falling apart. They were looking at a total loss. They were going to hurt you just to send a message, but that does not put money in their pockets. I smiled. It was the smile of a wolf. So I offered them 50 cents on the dollar, I said. I paid them $100,000 cash this afternoon. In exchange, they transferred the promissory note to me. They signed over the right to collect. They are out of the picture, Brad. You do not owe them a dime. Brad slumped against the island. He let out a long breath. Tears of relief streamed down his face. Oh, thank God, he sobbed. Thank God. Thank you, Clint. I knew you would not let them hurt me. I knew you still cared about family. He thought he was saved. He thought I was his savior. He did not understand physics. He did not understand that energy is never destroyed. It is only transferred. I am not finished. Brad, I said. He looked up, wiping his eyes. What? You do not owe them anymore, I said. You owe me. The relief vanished from his face. It was replaced by a new kind of fear, a deeper fear. I am the holder of the note, I said. I am your creditor. I own your debt. And unlike the loan sharks, I do not break legs. I break lives. I pointed to the document in his lap. Read the terms, Brad. It is a demand note. That means the lender can demand full repayment at any time without notice. And guess what? I am demanding it. Brad scrambled to his feet. But I do not have it, he shouted. You know I do not have it. That is why I was selling the apartment. I know, I said. But I also know something else. I know about the collateral. Brad froze. He stopped breathing. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. He looked like he wanted to vanish into the floorboards. Collateral, Patricia asked. Her voice was sharp. What collateral? He does not have any assets. Brad didn't tell you I asked her. I feigned surprise. When you borrow that kind of money from the underworld, you have to put up something real. They do not lend on good intentions. Brad started backing away. Mom, listen, he stammered. It was just a formality. I was going to pay it back. I was going to win it back. Show her the last page, Brad, I said. Brad did not move, so I reached down and flipped the folder open to the last page. I held it up for Patricia to see. It was a security agreement. It listed the collateral for the loan. The primary residence located at 45 Maple Drive, I read aloud. Patricia screamed. She stood up so fast she knocked over the coffee table. That is my house, she shrieked. That is my house. You cannot pledge my house. It is in my name. It is, I agreed. But look at the signature, Patricia. I pointed to the bottom of the page. There was a signature next to Brad's. It read, Patricia Miller. I did not sign that, she yelled. I never signed that. I know, I said. Brad signed it. He forged your signature. He stole the deed from your safe. He gave it to the loan sharks as security, and when I bought the debt, I bought the security agreement too. Patricia turned on her son. She looked like a demon. She flew at him. She clawed at his face. She hit him with her fists. You stole my house, she screamed. You stole my retirement. You thief. You ungrateful parasite. Brad cowered, covering his head. Mom, stop. I had to. They were going to kill me. I watched them, the mother and the son, the architect and the tool, tearing each other apart. It was ugly. It was violent. And it was exactly what they deserved. Enough, I said. My voice cracked through the room like a whip. They stopped. They stood there panting, bleeding, staring at me. Here is the situation, I said. I own the debt. I hold the collateral. And I have a team of lawyers led by Ms. Jenkins here who are ready to file for foreclosure on your house, Patricia, the moment the courthouse opens on Monday. Please, Clint, Patricia begged. She fell to her knees. She crawled toward me. Her pride was gone. Her arrogance was gone. She was just a desperate woman begging for her life. Do not take my house. It is all I have. I am 65 years old. Where will I go? You can go to the shelter, I said. Or you can sleep in a van. I hear it is very character building. I looked at my watch. It is 10 o'clock on Saturday night, I said. You have 24 hours. By 10 o'clock tomorrow night, I want $200,000 wired to the escrow account listed in that folder. 200,000, Brad cried. That is impossible. We cannot raise that in a day. Then you better start selling things, I said. Sell the Mercedes. Sell the jewelry you stole from my daughter. Sell the furniture. Sell the clothes off your back. But that won't be enough, Patricia sobbed. Then I guess you are losing the house, I said. I turned to Sarah. Let us go, I said. The air in here is stale. We walked to the door. I stopped one last time. I looked back at the wreckage of the Miller family. You wanted to play games with ownership, I said. You wanted to talk about who owns what. Well, now you know. I own the debt, I own the house, and I own you. You have 24 hours. I walked out. Sarah closed the door behind us. We walked to the elevator in silence. When the doors closed, Sarah looked at me. She was shaking her head, but she was smiling. You bought the debt, she said. You actually bought the debt. It was a good investment, I said. We walked out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped. The stars were coming out. I looked up at the sky. I felt lighter. The weight of the anger was lifting, replaced by the clarity of justice. I had not just defeated them. I had turned their own greed into a weapon and used it to dismantle their lives. Brad thought he was a gambler. He thought he could bluff his way through life. He did not know that you never bluff a man who holds all the cards. And I held the only card that mattered, the mortgage on his mother's house. The payoff was coming, and it was not going to be in cash. It was going to be in justice. The 24 hours that followed were not just a timeline. They were a slow-motion car crash. I sat in my truck across the street from Patricia's house on Maple Drive. I was not alone. Sarah Jenkins was in the passenger seat reviewing the foreclosure documents. 2 unmarked police cars were parked down the block waiting for my signal. We were watching the final act of a tragedy I had written, but Brad Miller was the one acting it out. Brad had spent the day running in circles. Kowalski had tracked his movements. Brad tried to sell the Lexus, but the title was in his mother's name and she was not answering her phone. He went to 3 pawn shops, but he had nothing left to sell because I had already recovered my mother's jewelry. He even called his old bookie trying to make a bet to win the money back, but word had spread. He was radioactive. Nobody would touch him. By 8 o'clock that night, Brad looked like a man who had walked through hell barefoot. He pulled up to his mother's house in the Mercedes that was about to be repossessed. He practically fell out of the car. He ran to the front door and banged on it. I rolled down my window to listen. The street was quiet. Every desperate word carried on the night air. "Mom, let me in," he screamed. "Mom, please." The door opened. Patricia stood there. She looked different. The armor was gone. She was wearing sweatpants and an old sweater. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing the age and the bitterness underneath. She looked at her son with cold eyes. "What do you want, Brad?" she asked. "We have to talk," Brad said, pushing past her into the house. "We have 2 hours left. Clint is going to call the note. We have to sell the house." I watched through the living room window. The curtains were open. It was like watching a silent movie where you knew exactly what the characters were screaming. Brad was pacing back and forth, waving his arms. Patricia was standing by the fireplace, her arms crossed, her posture rigid. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the bug Kowalski had planted in their living room weeks ago. The audio filled the cab of my truck. "You are not selling my house, Brad," Patricia said. Her voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who had already done the math. "This is my retirement. This is all I have left." "It is collateral," Mom, Brad shouted. "He forged the signature. Remember, Clint has the paper. If we do not pay him, he takes it anyway. If we sell it now, maybe we can get some equity out. Maybe we can pay him and have enough left to leave town." "No," Patricia said. "We fight it in court. We say it was coercion. We say you were under duress." "We cannot fight it," Brad screamed. "He has everything. He has the recordings, he has the texts, he has the proof that we defrauded Jasmine. If we go to court, we go to prison. The only way out is to pay him." "Then you pay him," Patricia snapped. "You got us into this mess. You and your gambling, you and your stupidity. I told you to be smart. I told you to marry the girl, get the apartment, and be quiet, but you had to be a big shot. You had to play poker with gangsters. You told me to steal the apartment," Brad yelled. "You told me to drug her. Do not act like you are innocent. You wanted the Lexus. You wanted the money. You are just as guilty as I am." Patricia walked up to him and poked him in the chest. "I am not guilty of anything," she hissed. "I tried to help my son. I tried to secure a future for my grandchild. You are the one who ruined it. And now you want me to live on the street to save your skin. No, I am not doing it. I am staying right here. Let Clint try to evict me. I will chain myself to the porch. I will go to the press again." "The press hates you," Brad said. "They know you stole from the orphans. You are done, Mom. We are both done unless we pay him." "I am not selling," Patricia screamed. "Get out! Get out of my house!" Brad stopped pacing. He stood very still. He looked at his mother. He looked at the woman who had enabled him, who had spoiled him, who had taught him that taking what you want is a virtue. "You have to sell," he said. His voice was low, dangerous. "Why?" Patricia asked, stepping back. "Because I need the money," Brad said. "And not just for Clint." "What are you talking about?" "I took out a second mortgage," Brad whispered. Patricia froze. She looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "What did you say?" 6 months ago," Brad said. "I needed cash. The bookies were threatening me. I forged your signature on a home equity line of credit. $200,000. I spent it all." The silence in the truck was heavy. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide. He had not just forged the security agreement for the loan sharks. He had already drained the equity out of the house. There was nothing to sell. The house was underwater. "You did what," Patricia whispered. Her face went pale. "I forged your name," Brad cried. "I had to. I thought I would win it back. I thought the condo sale would cover it." Patricia let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She flew at him. She clawed at his face. She was not a mother anymore. She was a woman watching her survival evaporate. "You stole my house," she shrieked. "You stole my life. You useless parasite. I should have left you with your father." She hit him. She scratched him. Brad tried to push her away, but she was fueled by pure adrenaline. They crashed into the coffee table. A lamp fell and shattered. They were wrestling on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and the ruins of their relationship. It was time. I picked up the radio. "Now," I said. The police cars lit up the street. Blue and red lights flashed against the house. Sirens wailed, cutting through the night. I got out of the truck. Sarah followed me. We walked up the driveway just as the officers kicked in the front door. "Police, get down on the ground," a sergeant shouted. We walked into the living room. It was a wreck. Brad was on the floor, bleeding from a scratch on his cheek. Patricia was standing over him, panting, her hair wild, her eyes crazy. When they saw the police, the fight went out of them. They realized it was over. The neighbors were coming out on their porches. The show was public. "Officer, arrest him!" Patricia screamed, pointing at Brad. "He stole my house. He forged my signature. He is a thief." Brad looked up. He saw me standing in the doorway. He saw the look on my face. It was not anger. It was pity. "You called them," Brad whispered. "I told you I was pressing charges," I said. The officers pulled Brad to his feet. They spun him around and cuffed him. He did not resist. He was limp. He was a man who had run out of road. Bradley Miller. You are under arrest for fraud, forgery, grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit extortion." The sergeant read. Patricia smoothed her sweater. She tried to compose herself. She tried to put the mask back on. "Thank you, officer," she said. "I want to press charges, too. He admitted to forging a mortgage in my name. I am a victim here." The sergeant looked at Patricia. Then he looked at me. I nodded. Sarah stepped forward. She handed a file to the sergeant. "Officer, before you go, we also have evidence implicating Mrs. Miller in the conspiracy to defraud Jasmine Jefferson and the embezzlement of funds from the First Baptist Charity," she said. "We suggest you take her into custody for questioning as well." Patricia's eyes went wide. "No," she said, backing away. "That is a lie. That is a mistake." The sergeant looked at the file. He looked at Patricia. "Ma'am, turn around and put your hands behind your back," he said. "No," Patricia screamed. "I am a respected member of this community. You cannot arrest me. I am a grandmother." "You are an accomplice, ma'am," the sergeant said, snapping the cuffs on her wrists, "and you have the right to remain silent." They dragged them out of the house. Brad was crying silently, tears streaming down his face. Patricia was shouting threats, shouting about lawyers, shouting that she was innocent. I stood on the porch and watched them go. I watched them get shoved into the back of separate squad cars. I watched the lights fade as they drove away toward the county jail. The house was empty now. The door was open. The broken lamp lay on the floor. It was a shell. Just wood and brick. The rot had been removed. I turned to Sarah. "Is it done?" I asked. "It is done," she said. "Brad will be in jail for a long time with those charges. The forgery alone carries 10 years. And with the mob debt, he is safer inside than out. And the house. The bank will foreclose on the second mortgage," Sarah said. "Patricia will lose it anyway. She has no assets left to fight the lawsuits." I looked at the house one last time. I thought about the first time I met them, how they looked down on me, how they judged my truck and my clothes, how they thought they were better. "They built their castle on sand," I said. We walked back to my truck. I felt a deep exhaustion settle into my bones. It was the good kind of tired, the kind you feel after a long day of pouring concrete, the kind you feel when the job is finished and the structure is sound. I got in the truck and drove home. I had to tell Jasmine. I had to tell her that the monsters were gone. I had to tell her that she was safe. Brad Miller had 24 hours to pay his debt. He paid it, but not with money. He paid it with his freedom. He paid it with his mother. He paid it with his future. The downfall was complete. The dust was settling, and in the morning I was going to start building something new, something that would last, something that no one could ever steal again. The fall of Patricia Miller was not a sudden drop like her son. It was a slow, structural decay that happened in public view. Sunday morning arrived with a bright, cruel sun that illuminated every flaw in her facade. Patricia did what she always did when her world was crumbling. She put on her pearls and drove to First Baptist Church. She thought she could outlast the scandal. She thought her 30 years of tithes and potlucks would buy her immunity from the truth. She parked her rental car in her reserved spot and walked toward the heavy wooden doors, her head held high like a queen walking to the gallows. But the congregation had seen the video. They had heard the recording. The whispers started the moment she stepped onto the pavement. People she had known for decades turned their backs. The choir director suddenly found something very interesting to look at on his shoes. The women of the auxiliary committee, the same women Patricia had bossed around for years, formed a wall of silence near the entrance. They did not block her path physically, they blocked her socially. They looked through her as if she were made of glass. Pastor Williams was waiting in the narthex. He was not smiling. He held a thick envelope in his hands. When Patricia reached for the holy water font, he stepped in front of her. "Patricia," he said, his voice echoing in the stone vestibule. "You cannot come in." Patricia tried to laugh it off. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Pastor, do not be silly. I am the head of the welcome committee." "Not anymore," the pastor said. "The audit is complete, Patricia. We found the discrepancies. The orphan fund, the building fund, the petty cash, $50,000 over 5 years. I borrowed it," Patricia hissed, her eyes darting around to see who was listening. "I was going to pay it back. Brad had a temporary cash flow problem." "You stole from the church," the pastor said. "You stole from the poor to lease a Mercedes. We are not pressing charges yet because we want to avoid a trial that would hurt the church's reputation. But you are excommunicated, Patricia. You are stripped of your titles. You are banned from the grounds." He handed her the envelope. It was a letter of formal dismissal. "Go home," the pastor said, "and pray for your soul." Patricia stood there shaking. For the first time in her life, she was the outcast. She turned and ran. She ran past the neighbors who used to envy her. She ran past the friends she had judged. She got into her car and drove away, but there was nowhere to go. The grocery store clerk knew. The postman knew. The lady at the dry cleaners knew. The town of Atlanta is big, but the circle of high society is small, and Patricia Miller had just been evicted from it permanently. Her phone stopped ringing. Her invitations dried up. She sat in her house alone, surrounded by the silence of a life that had turned out to be completely hollow. The social death was painful, but the legal death was fatal. Sarah Jenkins did not believe in mercy. She believed in total annihilation. On Tuesday morning, a process server knocked on Patricia's door. He handed her a stack of documents thick enough to choke a horse. It was not a criminal indictment. Those were still being processed by the district attorney. This was a civil suit. Jefferson versus Miller. We were suing her for everything. We sued her for the conversion of my mother's jewelry. We sued her for defamation of character regarding the video she posted about Jasmine. We sued her for intentional infliction of emotional distress. We sued her for conspiracy to defraud. Sarah had calculated the damages with the precision of a diamond cutter. We were asking for $300,000 in compensatory damages and $1 million in punitive damages. We knew she did not have the money. That was the point. Patricia tried to hire a lawyer. She went to 3 different firms. They all told her the same thing. "The evidence is overwhelming, Mrs. Miller. The recording is admissible. The bank records are clear. You have no defense. And since you have no liquidity, we require a $50,000 retainer up front." She did not have $50,000. Brad had stolen the equity in her house, and I held the note on the rest. She was trapped. On Wednesday, Sarah filed a lien against her property. On Thursday, the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on the second mortgage Brad had forged. The house of cards collapsed. Patricia had to liquidate. She had to sell everything to pay for a public defender for her criminal case. I watched from a distance as the estate sale company trucks pulled up to her house. Strangers walked through her front door, tracking mud on her carpets. They picked through her life like vultures. They bought her crystal vases for $5. They bought her designer clothes for pennies. They bought the furniture she had been so proud of. I saw a woman walk out with the dining room chairs Patricia had sat in when she told me I was not good enough for her family. I saw a man carry out the television she used to watch while ignoring my grandson. Her life was being dismantled piece by piece and sold to the highest bidder. She had to move out by the weekend. The bank was taking possession. She packed her remaining things into a few cardboard boxes. The Lexus was repossessed in the driveway while the neighbors watched from behind their curtains. She screamed at the tow truck driver. She threatened to sue him. He just hooked up the car and drove away, leaving her standing in the exhaust fumes. She had lost her reputation. She had lost her home. She had lost her car. She had lost her son to a prison cell. And now she was about to lose the last shred of her dignity. It was Friday evening. The sun was setting over my small brick house. The air smelled of barbecue and cut grass. Jasmine was sitting on the porch swing reading a book to Leo. He was laughing. His lungs were clear. His eyes were bright. I was working on the flower beds, weeding out the invasive vines that tried to choke the roses. A taxi pulled up to the curb. It was an old beat-up cab, not the kind Patricia Miller would have ever been caught dead in a week ago. The door opened. Patricia stepped out. She looked like a ghost. Her hair was gray at the roots. Her clothes were wrinkled. She was carrying a large purse that looked empty. She walked up the driveway. Her steps were slow. She looked at the house she had called a shack. She looked at the truck she had sneered at. I stood up. I wiped the dirt from my hands. I walked to the edge of the porch steps. I stood between her and my family. I was the wall. "Clint," she said. Her voice was cracked. "Patricia," I said, "you are trespassing." "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "The bank took the house. They took the car. Brad is in jail. He refuses to see me. He blames me for everything. He should, I said. You taught him how to be a monster. I need help, Clint," she said. She looked at the porch. She looked at Jasmine. Jasmine had stopped reading. She was holding Leo tight, staring at the woman who had thrown them into the street. "Jasmine," Patricia called out. Her voice wavered. "Jasmine, please. I am your mother-in-law. We are family. I made mistakes, but I am an old woman. I have no money. I have no home. Surely you can find it in your heart to forgive. Think of Leo. I am his grandmother." She took a step forward. She reached out a hand toward the boy. "Do not touch him," I said. My voice was low, but it stopped her cold. "I just want to see him," she cried. "He is my blood." Jasmine stood up. She put Leo down. "Go inside, Leo," she said gently. "Go watch cartoons." Leo looked at his grandmother. He did not recognize the woman in the wrinkled clothes. He just saw a stranger. He ran inside, and the screen door slammed shut. Jasmine walked down the steps. She stood next to me. She looked at Patricia. There was no fear in her eyes anymore. There was no hesitation. The trauma bond was dust. "You are not his grandmother," Jasmine said. Her voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who had walked through fire and come out steel. A grandmother protects her grandchild. A grandmother does not leave a 5-year-old to sleep in a van in the rain. A grandmother does not sell his mother's heirlooms to buy a car. "I was desperate," Patricia sobbed. "I was trying to save our family." "You destroyed our family," Jasmine said. "You destroyed your son, and you tried to destroy me. You called me a junkie, Patricia. You told the world I was unfit. You tried to take my son away from me not because you loved him, but because you wanted to hurt me." "I am sorry," Patricia begged. She fell to her knees on the concrete. "Please, Jasmine, I have nobody. I will do anything. I will clean your house. I will watch the boy. Just let me stay, just for a few nights, until I get on my feet." I looked at Jasmine. This was her moment. This was her exorcism. "No," Jasmine said. Patricia looked up shocked. "No. But where will I go?" "I do not know," Jasmine said. "And I do not care. You have the whole world to choose from, Patricia. Just not here, not near my son, not near my father." "But I am family," Patricia wailed. Jasmine looked at me. She smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. "This is my family," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder. "This man who drove into the night to find me. This man who put a roof over my head when you took mine away. This is family. You are just a woman who shares a last name with the man who ruined my credit." Jasmine turned around. She walked back up the steps. She sat back down on the swing. She picked up her book. She did not look back. Patricia looked at me. She was waiting for me to crack. She was waiting for the nice guy to come out. "Get off my property, Patricia," I said. She stared at me for a long moment. She saw the engineer. She saw the man who knew how to calculate the load. She realized finally that the bridge was gone. It had collapsed and there was no way across. She stood up. She dusted off her knees. She tried to muster some of her old arrogance, but it was gone. She was just a lonely, bitter woman standing in a driveway. "You are cruel," she spat. "I am just structural," I said. She turned and walked back to the taxi. She got in. The car drove away, disappearing down the street. I watched until it was gone. I walked up the steps. I sat down next to my daughter. We listened to the crickets. We watched the fireflies dancing in the twilight. The air was cool. The house was safe. The war was over. The enemy had been routed. The fortress held. "Is she gone?" Jasmine asked. "She is gone," I said. "Good," she said. We sat there for a long time. We did not need to talk. We just enjoyed the peace. It was a hard-won peace. It was a peace built on truth and justice. And it was the strongest thing I had ever built. The sale of the penthouse was not a business transaction. It was an exorcism. I did not step foot inside that apartment again after the night of the party. I did not want to smell the lingering scent of Patricia's perfume or see the ghost of Brad's arrogance reflected in the windows. I told Sarah Jenkins to list it and sell it fast. We found a buyer in 3 days, a young tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley who paid cash. He did not care about the history. He just wanted the view. The money from the sale hit the escrow account on a Tuesday. It was a significant sum. Added to that was the money I had recovered from the foreclosure of Patricia's house. After paying off the legal fees and the cost of buying Brad's debt, there was still a substantial profit. A lesser man might have bought a boat or a new truck, but I was not a lesser man. I was a grandfather, and I knew that money is only as good as the security it buys. I sat down with Sarah and we built a fortress. We established the Leo Jefferson Trust. It was an irrevocable trust designed with walls so thick no lawyer could ever breach them. The money was locked away for Leo's education and his future. It was protected from creditors. It was protected from marriage. It was protected from anyone who might try to manipulate him the way Brad had manipulated Jasmine. Then I took the remaining funds and I went shopping. But I did not go to the high-rises. I went to a quiet neighborhood with oak trees and brick houses. I found a 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a big backyard and a strong foundation. I inspected the crawl space myself. I checked the wiring. I checked the plumbing. It was solid. It was unpretentious. It was safe. I bought it in the name of the trust. Jasmine would live there. She would be the trustee. She would manage the property. But she would never be at risk of losing it to a signature on a piece of paper again. The house belonged to her son's future. It was a sanctuary that could not be gambled away or stolen. When I handed Jasmine the keys, she did not cry. She held them in her hand and felt their weight. They were heavy brass keys, not a plastic fob. "This is yours, Daddy," she asked. "No," I said. "It is Leo's. You are just the guardian of the gate." She nodded. She understood. We walked through the empty rooms. The sunlight streamed in through the windows. It did not smell of expensive wax and desperation. It smelled of potential. It smelled of a fresh start. We were not just moving furniture, we were moving lives. We were planting a flag in the ground and saying that the Jefferson line would not be broken. The financial architecture was complete, the structure was sound. The transformation of my daughter was slower than the construction of the trust, but it was far more beautiful to watch. The woman who had slept in a van shivering with fear was gone. In her place was a woman who was learning to wield her own strength. It was not easy. There were nights when she woke up screaming from nightmares about being homeless. There were days when she doubted herself, when the voice of Brad Miller still echoed in her head telling her she was stupid and weak. But she did the work. She went to therapy. She faced the trauma bond and she dismantled it brick by brick. She dissected the manipulation. She understood how Brad and Patricia had preyed on her kindness. She realized that her empathy was not a weakness, but they had weaponized it against her. She learned to put armor over her heart. She went back to school. She enrolled in a doctorate program for educational leadership. She said she wanted to run schools. She wanted to build systems that protected children. I watched her study late into the night, her books spread out on the kitchen table of the new house. I saw the focus in her eyes. It was the same focus I had when I was calculating load bearings. She was building her mind into a fortress. One afternoon, 6 months later, a letter arrived for her. It was from the county jail. It was from Brad. He was writing to say he was sorry. He was writing to say he had found God. He was writing to ask if she would bring Leo to visit him. Jasmine held the letter. Her hand did not shake. She read it once. Then she walked to the shredder in her home office. She fed the letter into the machine. She watched it turn into confetti. "He does not get to know us anymore," she said. "He lost the privilege of my attention." She filed for a name change the next day. She dropped Miller. She went back to Jefferson. She said she wanted Leo to carry a name that meant something, a name that stood for integrity and strength. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. She was a queen who had reclaimed her throne. She started volunteering at a women's shelter on weekends. She helped women who had been financially abused. She taught them how to read a bank statement. She taught them how to protect their credit. She taught them that love does not ask for your PIN number. She took her pain and she turned it into fuel. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. And every time she smiled a real, genuine smile, I knew that we had won. The debt was paid, the interest was collected, and we were free. The lake was glass. The sun was just starting to burn off the morning mist, turning the water into a sheet of gold. I sat in my folding chair on the end of the dock. My fishing rod was resting against my knee. The line disappeared into the dark water, waiting for a bite. Next to me, Leo sat on a bucket. He was 6 now. He was wearing a life jacket and holding a small rod I had bought him. He was serious. He was watching the bobber with an intensity that made me smile. He had his mother's eyes and my patience. "Grandpa," he whispered, "do you think the fish are awake?" "Fish never sleep, Leo," I said. "They are always watching. You have to be patient. You have to be still." I watched him. He was safe. He was healthy. He did not remember the cold nights in the van. He did not remember the fear. Those memories would fade, replaced by mornings like this. Mornings of peace and safety. I looked out across the water. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. I thought about the anger that had fueled me. It was gone now. The fire had burned itself out, leaving behind a clean, cold ash. I did not hate Brad and Patricia anymore. Hate requires energy. And they were not worth my energy. They were just structural failures. They were weak materials that had crumbled under pressure. I thought about justice. People talk about justice like it is something the courts give you. But courts only give you paper. Real justice is something you build. It is the result of action. It is the result of standing up when everyone expects you to sit down. It is the result of protecting what is yours with everything you have. I had been a builder my whole life. I built skyscrapers that scraped the clouds. I built bridges that spanned raging rivers. But looking at my grandson, I realized that this was my greatest project. This family, this safety, this peace. The foundation was not concrete or steel. It was truth. It was loyalty. It was the willingness to do the hard thing, the necessary thing to keep the walls from falling down. I felt a tug on my line, a small vibration that traveled up the rod and into my hands. I got one. Grandpa Leo shouted, his bobber dancing. "Steady, Leo," I said. "Do not yank. Reel it in slow. Feel the weight." He reeled. He fought the fish. He was strong. He was focused. He pulled a small bass out of the water. It flopped on the dock, silver and green in the sunlight. I caught it. He cheered. I caught it. "You sure did, son," I said. "You sure did." I helped him unhook the fish. We admired it for a moment. Then we let it go. We watched it swim back into the deep water. We sat back down. We cast our lines again. The world was quiet. The world was right. I was Clinton Jefferson. I was a father. I was a grandfather. I was the wall that held back the storm. And as long as I had breath in my lungs, no wind, no rain, and no man named Brad Miller would ever knock us down again. The sun climbed higher. The day was warm. "This is the good life," Grandpa Leo said, swinging his legs. "Yes, it is, Leo," I said. "Yes, it is." I closed my eyes and listened to the water lapping against the pilings. I was tired. But it was a good tired. The work was done. The house was built. And it was time to rest. Before I go, let me ask you this. If someone came for your family, how far would you go to stop them? Would you burn it all down to save the ones you love? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories to tell, more battles to fight. But for now, I am going fishing. See you in the next one. I learned that kindness without boundaries is nothing more than self-destruction. For years, I thought loving my family meant giving them everything they wanted, but I realized that true love sometimes means taking everything away to force them to see the truth. Money is just a tool. It can build a fortress or dig a grave depending on who holds the shovel. A father's duty isn't just to provide, it is to protect. Even if that means becoming the villain to save the ones you love. Justice isn't given, it is built brick by those brave enough to draw the line. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more tales of justice and redemption. Let me know in the comments, would you have forgiven them or would you have burned it all down like I did? See you in the next one.